The following is a special presentation on TNN, the Nashville Network.
The history of one club is the history of today's stock cars, with roots in the early 70s. Among its first heroes in the 70s, Mark Martin and Rusty Wallace, literally exuberant teens. It produced career competitors pointing the way, Fair, Seneca, and then today's new wave strapping in with that same Waltrip vision. That was then, the future is now. Fresh approaches, Benson, Allen, and St. Amant in steel, but still chasing the man for all seasons of ASA, Mike Eddy, in his 19th ASA year, today pursuing more immortality.
Hello from Nashville, and today is the most important day in the history of the American Speed Association. For the first time, they're live on national television. Now, this division is so respected within racing circles that from coast to coast, cars of this weight, size, and ilk are simply referred to as ASA-type cars. It's the standard. Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Newber, and joining me on this broadcast is a man who has seen more ASA races than any other journalist in the country over the past decade, Rob Albright. And Rob, this has been an electric week.
It sure has. And Larry, for more than 2 decades, those of us on the inside have believed that ASA was the best-kept secret in motorsports. Today, these guys come out of the shadows into the spotlight, and I think it's going to put some tremendous additional pressure on many of them, especially the younger drivers.
It's been a week of parties and television and radio interviews. All the drivers yesterday thought that this track would be ice. It was that slippery with the tire and track combination, but could be different.
I think, Larry, that pit stop strategy today will determine the ultimate outcome of this event. Yesterday it was sunny, extremely hot and humid. The humidity remains today. The sun is gone, at least for the moment. I think 4 pit stops may be the rule of the day, and will determine the race.
The third member of our broadcast team is the veteran Ralph Shaheen, and he is standing by with, we call him one of the surprises of the 1991 season. He was just Rookie of the Year a year ago, and today he's leading the point standings.
Johnny Benson Jr. has never finished outside of the top 5 so far in 1991. He has also never qualified worse than 7th, but he still hasn't gotten a win. Now that qualification bit went down the drain a little bit today. Johnny, you're starting 11th on the grid and you're still looking for that win. Probably not where you were hoping to start today.
No, we were hoping to definitely start further up front, but this will give us a chance to pass a couple cars and see what the track's doing.
We've had a little bit of rain, a lot of humidity increasing. What is that going to do to you stamina-wise, and is this race car going to be set up okay for the start of this race?
We're hoping that the setup's pretty close. The heat's going to be bad. Humidity's high, it's hot, and it's going to drain us a little bit, but once you get going, you try not to think about that too much.
Well, 11th isn't where he wanted to start, but he is still looking for that elusive win. All that means is Johnny Benson Jr. just has to work a little harder today.
He has to work around 31 other competitors. This is one of the most exciting racetracks in the country. It's a little more than a half mile, but it is high banked. The Nashville Motor Raceway on the fairgrounds. This is Music City. It's an exciting town. We're going to have a great race today, and Ralph Shaheen is standing by with some of the many dignitaries attending today's festivities.
2 special people joining me down here, Larry, at the head of the grid. Mr. Archie Long, the executive in charge of General Motors Service Parts Operations, and TNN's #1 race fan, Katie Haas. Katie?
All right, Ralph, we're so glad to be here. I tell you what, TNN already has a very large commitment to racing, and we're very proud to be bringing to you, our racing fans, more coverage. This year, the first televised edition of the American Speed Association's race, the ASA. Archie, welcome to Nashville. We're glad to be here.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased to be here as well. Right. You know, this race is going to be a great race. The Delco Voyager 250 is the AC-Delco Challenge Series. Fantastic day. Rained a little bit this morning. Looks great now.
Oh, this is a great track, the South's premier track out here. We have a lot of fans out here, and you know what they're waiting for. What do they say in the ASA?
Oh, yes. Gentlemen, are they going to hear me, I wonder? Gentlemen, let's go racing.
All right. They can hear you.
Archie Long with the command and over 15,000 horsepower fires to life on pit road here at the Nashville Motor Raceway. We will go 250 laps today. This is the AC-Delco Voyager Battery 250 from the Nashville Motor Raceway. Back with the grid after this. The 1991 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you by Delco Voyager, reliable, durable for the long day. And by Coors Light, the one that won't slow you down. The Silver Bullet is the right beer now. And by Goodyear, the unanimous choice of every race team in the AC-Delco Challenge Series. And by Liquid Crystal, guaranteed to provide the best shine and protection. And by Just for Men, from the leader in men's hair coloring, blends away gray in 5 minutes. Well, as you heard Archie Long mention, it rained here earlier today, but it burned off about an hour ago. The temperature is 80. It seems like 180. Humidity, it's way up there. Winds minimal. Yeah, it called for partly cloudy, and I guess that's where we are right now, Rob.
We sure are. The track itself, Larry, just a touch under 0.6 of a mile in length. The turns banked at 25 degrees are extremely abrasive. The drivers have told us they're tremendously different from one end to the other, and it requires a compromised setup of the race cars. The straightaways, a bit longer than 2 football fields.
It shows 25 degrees, but there is great history in the banking of this racetrack. At one time, it was the highest banked racetrack in America. They said 35 degrees. Many of the drivers, including Darrell Waltrip, said we felt it was around 40 degrees. And now the starting grid for today's AC-Delco Voyager Battery 250.
The top 25 qualifiers all within half a second of one another. Scott Hansen will go from the pole position. Runner-up in the point standings, lives in the shadows of Packer Stadium in Green Bay. Darrell Waltrip won his first ASA race as a youngster in 1972.
In row 2, a veteran and a youngster. Twice runner-up in points, Harold Fair, and Glenn Allen Jr., just 20 years of age.
ASA's all-time winningest driver with 66 career victories, the defending national champion Bob Seneker, and the 1987 ASA Rookie of the Year, currently leading the NASCAR rookie points, Ted Musgrave.
7th and 8th start positions are Tim Steele in car number 89 and Kent Stauffer in car number 90.
And in the 5th row, 5-time national champion, winner of 3 consecutive races in the AC-Delco Challenge Series, car number 88, Michigan's Mike Eddy, and young Jeff Neal in car number 5.
In the 6th row, 11th and 12th starting positions, point leader John Benson out of Michigan on the inside, and Dennis Lampman having his best ASA season ever on the outside.
The 7th row, Dave Jackson in car number 45. They call him the man in orange. The car, the uniform, everything is orange. And the 0 hero from Illinois, Tom Jones.
One of many siblings of Winston Cup race driver Jim Sauter, the Jay Sauter on the inside, and the outside in the 16th starting position, the debut of the Ford engine car, Tim Bidowa from Lansing, Michigan.
The 9th row, Joe Shear in car number 36 will go for the inside position. And the guy who won the All-American 400, ASA's last visit to Nashville Raceway, car number 7, Gary St. Amant.
And a man who crashed in practice yesterday. We did not know if he was going to be able to go. Ken Schrader, he borrowed a car overnight. He starts in 19th position. Bruce Vanderlyn out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and a Pontiac is on the outside. The rest of the starting positions from 11th row on back, Dennis Vogel will start on the inside of that row with Scott Walters on the outside. The 12th row side by side, Scott Kaiser and John Olson out of Wisconsin. In row number 13, Pat Bordow, who had a great last chance race yesterday afternoon, and Tom Harrington. The 14th row, Indiana's Tony Raines, now residing in Pennsylvania, and Terry Baldry, also having a solid season. In the 15th row, John Wilson from Springfield, Ohio, and from nearby, Dayton, Ohio, nearby to Springfield, Dean South. In 16th row, car number 86, Kenny Adams. He starts on the left flank, and on the right or outside flank, that's Dave Stamm. That comprises the starting grid of 32 cars. The 16 fastest qualifiers got in through one-lap qualification runs yesterday. We had a last chance race, and then several promoters' options based primarily on point standings.
What we'll really want to watch early, I think, Larry, is keeping focus on Tony Raines back in car number 25. Now we're riding on board with Harold Fair in car number 81. And he likes this track. He expects to do well today. His best starting position this season.
and this unusual angle from the roof of Harold Baer's race car. This is the man who is the proprietor of a gas station in one of the economically, let's say, not advantaged areas of Detroit. He's an accepted and respected citizen of that community.
Harold said that he'd like to retire by racing full-time and give up the gas station. Now we're inside the car of Mike Eddy, car number 88, the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac. He's gunning for a 4th consecutive victory. That would tie a record established by Butch Miller in 1987.
And if he does that, you're going to ride with him. There is Mike Eddy chomping on the gum, going through the mental checklist and looking pretty relaxed as he's getting ready to go for 250 laps. Mike has to be feeling good. He usually doesn't qualify this well. This is a great start for him.
No, he doesn't. And in fact, it almost works to his advantage to not qualify well. Qualifying well today, let's see what he does at the start. As Mike says, I didn't come here today to make friends.
Scott Hansen will be bringing the field around. On the outside of the front row, it's the responsibility of Darrell Waltrip to bring that train around. Waltrip in the bright orange, black, white, and silver number 17, the familiar colors now, and Hansen in a predominantly white number 53. Scott Hansen has become one of the stars of the American Speed Association really in 2 short years.
Although Scott was the Rookie of the Year in ASA in 1989, by racing standards, he was definitely not a rookie. He was 4-time champion of the Fox River Racing Association in Wisconsin and has run a number of different types of racetracks. He, I think, in the minds of many of the drivers, Larry, is the guy to beat for the championship in 1991.
Darrell Waltrip darting to the high side, trying to work some heat into those tires. That should not be a problem here at Nashville. We mentioned to you earlier that that was one of the concerns the drivers had yesterday.
And there's car number 25, Tony Raines. It's been an up-and-down season in the early going. He's been extremely fast, but he's had all sorts of mechanical problems that have plagued him, and that evidenced itself again yesterday. Tony ready to go racing.
The crowd stands anticipating the green flag. Hansen and Waltrip. Baer on a corner number 4. Hansen gets a gigantic jump. We're green at Nashville.
Scott Hansen leading the field down into turn number 1 with Darrell Waltrip right behind as the field files past the start-finish line.
.250 laps to go. Despite that deficit that Waltrip got at the start, he moves in on Hansen.
The most terrifying part of any race is the early stages of the event. A lot of these drivers either have sponsors today that they want to impress on national television, or they're seeking national sponsorship. We expect to see moves back in the pack. 2 drivers right now that are only focused on one another. The pole sitter and current leader Scott Hansen, and pressing him hard in the very early going, trying down low, now working to the high side, Darrell Waltrip in car number 17.
ASA racing is not unlike any other form of racing in America. It's not often that the people who lead dominate the first 10 laps of a race win. Michael Andretti, I know, has been discounting that theory of recent. This is not an indication that Hansen and Waltrip are going to dominate this race, although every driver to a man fears Waltrip at this track.
Well, they certainly do. And I talked to Ted Musgrave in the pit area after qualifying yesterday. He pretty much had conceded this race to Waltrip. He said Waltrip had installed some trick things on the rear suspension of his race car that he thought would work to his advantage as the right side tires begin to wear.
Waltrip goes to the inside of Hansen into corner number 1. He holds the line coming out of 2. Hansen tromps the accelerator out of the high bank, corner number 2. Waltrip snuggles right down on the bottom. That car is working.
As close as qualifications were yesterday, I'm surprised, Larry, that these 2 drivers have been able to build such a significant early lead over the 3rd place car of Harold Fair at this moment.
Rob, I'll tell you, we're going to document a story for you about the man whom I believe is the fastest guy in the racetrack in these early laps. We're going to show him to you right now. It's a white number 90. It's Kent Stauffer, and there he is. He's had a tremendous race. He's running 4th.
Larry, if there's a guy in this series that epitomizes the terminology blue-collar racer, it's Kent Stauffer in car number 90. A lot of folks have felt for a number of years since he built and maintained his own race cars that if he ever got a shot at the really good stuff, he could run up in front. He's excited. He brought a brand new car to Nashville this weekend, a brand new Ford V6 underneath the hood, and he's sure making those folks in Dearborn happy in the early going.
Kent Stauffer is running right now in 4th position on the racetrack. He is currently ranked 11th in the point standings, and as Rob mentioned, is one of only 2 Fords in this race. And Stauffer has just turned in a terrific ride. He has actually closed in on the 2 race leaders, Darrell Waltrip and Scott Hansen.
What I wonder at this point is if Darrell Waltrip's strategy is wise. We watched a last chance qualifying race yesterday, Larry. Went down to the pits and looked at the tires of the race cars, and they were literally worn out after 25 laps with a much harder compound than these drivers used last year. These are, in fact, the same tires that they utilized on the very fast Milwaukee Mile.
I think one of the keys that you'll see, watch where Waltrip and Hansen run when they're in the race, when in the corners. They're right down on the bottom, saving those tires as much as they possibly can.
I think a lot of the drivers at this juncture are not too concerned about picking their way to the front. Most of the front runners that we talked about, or talked to yesterday, the drivers that are expected to contest for the win today, said that probably 4 pit stops would be required to change right side tires 3 times and the lefts at least once. And I think that bears pointing out, Larry, you can only change 2 tires at a time on any yellow flag pit stop. That will create some real strategy on the part of the drivers and their pit crews.
Mike Eddy has been the man to beat. Now this is another double-digit car. This is the green and white number 66 of Glenn Allen Jr. Twice this year he has sat on the pole, and Rob, he is backing up. He has a problem.
He certainly does. Johnny Benson Jr., the current points leader, just went past him as the leaders already have begun to move into some lap traffic.
It's Waltrip, Hansen as we take a look at 20-year-old Glenn Allen, the former high school football star. 3rd is Harold Fair with Kent Stauffer. Yes, that's right, ASA fans. Kent Stauffer running a very competitive 4th position and moving in. Right now in 5th position is used to be the Bluebird. Now it's Bob Seneca in a predominantly white car. And one of the race favorites has pitted. Pulling into pit lane is Ted Musgrave.
Well, it works to Ted's disadvantage that he runs only a handful of ASA shows. He runs now predominantly in the Deep South. This is his first appearance with ASA in 1991, and the biggest question that I had was the preparedness of this race car.
Ralph Shaheen is standing by in the pits talking with the man calling the shots for Darrell Waltrip.
That man is Eddie Jones. Eddie, Darrell's running away from him right now. Is that a safe strategy? Can he keep this pace up all day?
Well, it's always been Darrell's practice here at Nashville to run as good as he could all day because you never know when anything's going to happen. Any advantage you can get is like any other race. You just have to take it the way you can. Are you worried about tire wear here? No, not at this time because we figure everyone's going to have to wear the same, change the same. So we think we'll be in pretty good shape. Tires look good in practice.
14 laps are down. That means we have about 235 to go. There is race leader Darrell Waltrip. Just to update you on Musgrave, he has pulled from the pits. And now our latest victim on the racetrack is Jeff Neal, a man who comes from a racing family known for developing racing engines, is just about coming to a stop on the back straightaway. I don't think he's going to make it all the way around.
This is a major disappointment for Jeff Neal. He had such high expectations here today. He'd been off to his best start in 1991 since he earned the Rookie of the Year honors in 1988. He had several top 10 finishes to his credit. He ranked 7th in the point standings, and they had a special thing to work for today. His crew chief, Harold Fair's son, Harold Jr., had his grandfather pass away this week. So they were really hoping for a strong run in the Z-Rex Buick here this weekend.
The yellow coming out for Jeff Neal, who started this race in 10th position, but with the yellow coming out now and his car sitting silently at the entrance of corner number 3, he's going to be slipping back several laps. He was very anticipatory about today's race. He had a lot of confidence coming in here. He actually felt that he had a shot at the first couple of rows, but it didn't work out that way. Respectable, he was 10th, but it wasn't quite the competitiveness that he had hoped for.
Jeff Neal did not want to be out of this race this early. You can literally feel with him the frustration that has welled up in his heart as he sits haplessly and helplessly in car number 5 on the backstretch.
We commented about Glenn Allen Jr., the Cincinnati, Ohio. We no longer can call him a teenager. Now he's finally 20, slowing down noticeably in the early laps. Ralph Shaheen.
Well, they've got the problem underneath the hood, Larry. They think they are losing a cylinder. So Glenn Allen is radioed into the crew. The crew is going to work under the hood, searching for the problem. They're going to put the hood back down and send him back out and hopefully see if it wasn't the cylinder, but maybe something a little bit more minor than that. So right now, frustration for Glenn Allen Jr. as well.
Occasionally, Larry, it can be something as simple as a spark plug wire that has come loose from the race car, a wire off the distributor, something in the ignition system, and I'm sure that's what they're hoping for at this moment.
Glenn Allen Jr. is certainly one of the rising stars in the American Speed Association, and people are predicting great things for this young man. I mentioned he's only 2020, but this is actually his 5th season in the American Speed Association. He started the season off with a roar, 2 poles plus a win at Columbus, Ohio, not too far from his home of Cincinnati, but it's been a struggle since then.
I've never seen anyone mature in such a short period of time. His first year, he was a literal joke on the racetrack. A lot of folks thought his father, Glenn Allen Sr., had brought him to the major leagues too soon. Every racetrack he spun, most tracks, he hit something or somebody. Boy, has he grown up, and he proved that he has the mettle to run up front by winning the opening race of the season this year at Columbus.
Rob, you may have been very close. Ralph reports that apparently it was a spark plug problem for Glenn Allen Jr., so he'll go back to the back of the pack. We've only had 2 cars drop to the wayside at this point. Jeff Neal's car, the Xerox number 5, sits in the pit area at this point, as does Tim Vidoa's brand new Ford Thunderbird. We're going back to green, and Glenn Allen has got work cut out for him.
He certainly does. Well at the rear of the pack. Ted Musgrave is back there as well, but he's several laps down. And we also noticed that Rookie of the Year leader Tim Vidoa has brought his brand new Ford Thunderbird on pit road, so maybe Ralph can bring us up to date on what's going there as Waltrip just continues to set the pace out front.
Back green at the Nashville Motor Raceway. This is the American Speed Association live on TNN, and Darrell Waltrip has grabbed the early lead after about 1/10 of this race has gone by. Running second is pole setter Scott Hansen, and there is a change for position in the top 10.
Mike Eddy is now trying to make his way toward the front. He's not normally known for his patience. He likes to get to the front and run in front as long as he can, literally sideways out of turn number 4 as he tries to make the move on the youngster from Michigan, Tim Steele. And Steele is no slouch, Gary. He will not move over and let him by.
Riding with Mike Eddy. Let's follow him around as he follows Tim Steele.
And you can see just how rough a ride it is for these drivers as we continue to ride with Mike Eddy. And for Ted Musgrave fans, Larry, back on pit road for a second time. Not a good day.
Ted Musgrave back in the pits. He had a left, make that a right front tire go flat. His first problem was a panhard bar that moved on him. Jeff Neal's problem, we found out, gentlemen, was ignition problems. They pushed that car back behind the wall now, and we'll try and get a word with Jeff.
Mike Eddy continues to do battle with Tim Steele in car number 89, and look who's lurking right behind them. It's our current points leader, Johnny Benson Jr., who's begun to show some strength in car number 21.
At 6th and 7th, well, it's a tie for 6th right now. Number 88 on the inside, number 89 on the outside. Apparently, that's Steele's problem. His digit number is 1 too high than Mike Eddy. 6th and 7th again. You mentioned Benson. He is 8th, and running in 9th right now is Dennis Lantman. Again, Dennis also having a terrific season this year in the ASA. Eddy and Steele come together out of corner number 2. There's a bump right there when the cars go over a tunnel that leads from the outside of the track to the inside.
And now this is what Mike Eddy would see if he had a rear view mirror and was able to see what's going on with Tim Steele. Steele just will not give up the fight. And
trouble in corner number 4.
And down in turn number 4, several cars have come together. You can see the smoke. Pat Bordeaux involved in car number 4. The rookie Kenny Adams in car number 86.
And I think
also.
Glenn Allen was also swept up in that. It was just a slight love tap as most of the confusion was over by the time Allen got there. But another setback for Glenn Allen. If the yellow comes out, he does remain on the lead lap.
Glenn Allen had been trying to pick his way back up toward the front of the field. The ignition problem apparently solved for car number 66, and Larry came very close to going a lap down early.
He did indeed. We've gone back yellow with 27 laps down. Darrell Waltrip continues to set the pace here. Now, here's what the wreck looked like from the camera that we have perched right on top of the wall coming out at corner number 4.
Exiting the 4th turn, looking now for Glenn Allen Jr. He was really not involved. He was caught up in a tangle between car number 86, that's the machine of Kenny Adams, the Willowick, Ohio chauffeur, and Pat Bordeaux, who today was making his first ever ASA start, a rather inauspicious debut.
So the hometown boy, or the man who knows this racetrack better than anybody else, good old DW, has been showing his heels to everybody. Can he hold on? We'll find out. This is the AC-Delco Challenge Series, the American Speed Association, live on TNN. After 29 of 250 laps, Darrell Waltrip leads this race. Scott Hansen out of Wisconsin is 2nd. Harold Fair, the Michigander, is 3rd. Ken Stouffer, the Ohioan, is 4th. And another Michigander, Bob Seneker, is 5th. This is inside Jeff Neal's car. He had an ignition problem.
Well, they're working on the ignition box itself, and you can see that Jeff is actually part of the crew from his cockpit seat working on that race car. Jeff has always built his own race cars and maintained them. He's got his crew chief there with him, and that is Harold Fair Jr. Jeff is Harold's son-in-law.
Jeff Neal in the car number 5 with the Xerox sponsorship, talking about the origin of numbers. He had another number, 21, I believe, was his favorite number, but number 5 came closest to looking like the graphics of his sponsor, Xerox, so that's what they went with.
Darrell Waltrip down low. Car number 53, Scott Hansen, the second place car up high, has sandwiched in between them and the third running 81 of Harold Fair is the lapped machine of Kenny Adams. Fourth is still that strong running Ford of Kent Stauffer. Bob Seneker quietly, patiently running in 5th place, and his strongest opponent, as he refers to Mike Eddy, is in 6th. 7th is Tim Steele. A battle for 8th shaping up between the gentle giant Dennis Lampman and the guy they're now calling the Professor because he wears wire-rimmed glasses when he races, our points leader Johnny Benson.
And in 10th position is Ken Schrader. Yep, the same Ken Schrader. Now let's go back and look at that tussle for the number 5 position. That's Mike Eddy on the inside. He has won 3 in a row. He's going after a record-tying 4th this afternoon. And on the outside of Mike Eddy is Bob Seneker.
Once again, Kenny Adams playing the spoiler for Kent Stauffer as he moves to the high side of the racetrack. And we've got trouble up between turns 1 and 2.
Appears to be the number 24 car of Scott Kaiser, who has spun on his own. I saw no contact with the outside wall, but another yellow flag comes out here in the early laps. This track can prove to be a very tricky one. The corners are banked high. The straightaways are basically flat. It's like a smaller version of the Talladega Raceway. The track here, it has some wave-like spots in it, which really makes it demanding for the drivers. But the biggest thing that the drivers all talk about is the abrasiveness to the tires.
It certainly is, and we expect that to be a problem throughout the day. So far, the only driver that we've seen experiencing apparently tire problems is car number 98, Ted Musgrave. As we mentioned earlier, Larry, in our 25-lap qualifying race yesterday, those drivers literally wore out right-side tires, but I think they're utilizing a different car setup today, maybe a bit more on the conservative side.
Well, it's an outbreak of yellow fever, as many of my fellow racing journalists, broadcast style, like to say. We certainly have had more yellow flags than what we anticipated. There will be at least one mandatory pit stop. Many of the drivers expect to stop as many as 4 times. Now, here are the current points. Rob has mentioned many times that John Benson leads. You can see that Scott Hansen is close behind. He's very competitive again today. Bob Seneker traditionally is 3rd. Mike Eddy, those 3 wins, but not much else, is 4th. And Harold Fair, the perennial bridesmaid, is in 5th position. Hey, ready to go green one more time again, very quickly.
Darrell Waltrip picking up the lead in the Western Auto AC-Delco Chevrolet Lumina, the bright black and red painted automobile. The car, Larry, that he brought here in 1987 and beat Mark Martin in the All-American 400. He's reskinned it, rebodied it, put a new V6 under the hood, and as he has proven time and again in his racing career, he can take old stuff and make it run brand new.
These are definitely Darrell Waltrip's woods. He knows where every tree is, where every stump, every stream, and where the pastures are. And Darrell Waltrip is one tough customer. Allow me to pick up a pun to another one of his normal competitors. When he comes here at Nashville, this is the racetrack he will tell you that he really honed his skills on and has made him the race driver that he is today.
At the outset, we told the race fans to keep an eye on car number 25, the machine of Tony Raines, as we continue to chronicle his move up through the field. He started way back in 27th position. He just moved around Jay Sauter for 12th. What a run for this youngster.
Many race drivers don't simply race one time each weekend. The summer is only a few months, a few weeks long, so they try to cram as much living as they possibly can into that short time span. Ralph Shaheen has a report.
Well, Kenny Schrader is the epitome of that saying, and what he has been doing in the last 3 days now. Schrader is going to run 4 races. He ran Friday night in the Virginias, came out here and practiced and qualified the car on Saturday, then went up to Granite City, Illinois, and according to Schrader, he smoked them, lapping the entire field just about. Tonight, or today, he's trying to do it here, and then as soon as he's done here at this ASA race, he's jumping on his plane and going back up to Indiana to run stock cars on the dirt. Kenny Schrader, another busy weekend.
Well, Ralph, he sort of smoked him here. Actually, blew his own doors off in practice yesterday. It was a practice incident where he and Mike Eddy almost came together. Kenny had to slam the brakes on. The car turned right, and he went into the wall with a deafening thud. He really damaged the car severely. He was able to pick up the backup car owned by the DeWitts that normally sits resting, waiting for something to go wrong with Tim Fedewa's frontline machine.
It was a frightening-looking accident yesterday in practice for Schrader. I think he just made a tactical mistake. He came out on the racetrack with brand new racing tires, and some of the drivers that were in front of him on the racetrack had on older tires, and Schrader just came up on them too quickly to get slowed down and found himself in trouble and up against the concrete.
This is grassroots racing gone professional. It's Saturday night, if you will, moving into the spotlight of live television on Sunday afternoon. For the first time in its history, the American Speed Association is live on national television, and they pick a very special place to do it at. Music City, USA, Nashville, one of the most famous racetracks and certainly one of the most outstanding half miles in America.
Points leader Johnny Benson picking up a position on the racetrack, going around Michigan arch rival in car number 89, Tim Steele. That is Steele's backup car, and a major problem that hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about a little bit later on today. In his primary machine yesterday, this car was rolled out of the trailer. They almost didn't bring it to Nashville. It has not been on the racetrack since 1990.
There was a very unusual incident that descended, I guess you'd say exploded onto this team this weekend. We'll document that for you a little later, but this is the backup car. It was actually purchased by another businessman, and those of you familiar with ASA say, hey, that's not Tim Steele's number. He normally runs a number 85, and that is correct. The number 85 was disqualified from this week's competition, but we'll get back to that in just a minute. Tony Raines had a great race in the non-qualifiers race yesterday, although not as spectacular as he has been today.
Tony has an interesting history. He's still very young at just 25 years of age. Began his racing career when he went to the facilities of Ray Dillon. Ray, one of the best-known short-track stock car builders in the country. And he said, I want a job. I want to go racing. And Ray said, I don't have any positions with the race team. Would you like to work on the farm? So Tony Raines got his racing career underway by baling hay for Ray Dillon. The rest is history. He's a front runner today.
We were commenting about Tim Steele and his problems. Incidentally, we have an unofficial report that he may have a tire going down. If so, we'll certainly follow that story for you. But we were commenting about what happened to that team earlier this week. And it resulted in a disqualification, a $5,000 fine, which the team has said, yeah, we think it is fair. But there was a lot more to the story. First, here's Tim's father, Harold.
Well, I just like to win, and I went back to the garage about 3 o'clock in the morning. I met with my crew chief, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he didn't really agree with it, but I insisted, and Tim had nothing to know about what we did or anything. We were going to tell Tim just before he went out to qualify how to use what we put in the car, and we got caught.
And what that was, that during a pre-race inspection, ASA inspectors found an illegal nitrous oxide bottle installed in the car. And that's the reason for the disqualification. But the Texana Bar and Grill machine certainly was not dead for the weekend. Texana Bar and Grill were very instrumental in all the hieroglyphics, if you will, of this weekend. And they're on the side of that car. The backup car is brought out, and Tim Steele is right where he always is, running solidly in the top 10.
You wonder what the heck nitrous oxide is. It's something that drag racers often use. When injected into the engine, it creates a tremendous increase for a short period of time in horsepower. And I think the intent on the part of Harold Steele was to give Tim the ability in his qualifying run, Larry, to get a bit of extra horsepower and maybe win the pole position.
This is the fight for 9th position. John Benson, Tony Raines. Michigan versus an Indiana native now living in Pennsylvania. Cars number 21, Benson, and 25, Raines.
Frankly, Gary, it looks like Raines' car is working much better than Benson. Now look at Johnny as he goes into turn number 1. The right rear corner wants to head out toward the wall. The car's extremely loose. It's difficult to drive when it gets like that. Raines' car driving right down on the bottom.
And we've had a change for the runner-up position. Harold Fair, the veteran, the man who has finished second in the point standings. I'm sure to him it seems like too many times, indeed it's been only twice, has moved into second place. Harold Fair in the black car number 81 from Detroit, Michigan, gets around the number 53 of Scott Hansen.
It seems like Fair's career epitomizes patience and persistence. He ran 109 career ASA events before he captured his first win, that coming on the high-banked half mile at Salem in 1988.
We're riding with Harold Fair. Back straightaway, entering corner number 3. Fair is looking out on Scott Hansen, now running in the 3rd position after starting this race on the pole. 56 laps now complete.
See Scott Hansen trying to stay with there, but having great difficulty doing it.
Fifth position, still very much up for grabs. There's an unusual sight. The number 9 of Dennis Lampman moving to the outside of Bob Seneca and holding off Mike Eddy. Dennis heading the race.
Up until 1991, the man they call the Gentle Giant, because he kind of reminds one of a younger, tiny Lund. He's huge. Probably stock car racing is the only kind that he could do with his girth. But he's run very infrequently with the American Speed Association over the last several years. Decided to come full-time this year, maybe because of the involvement with TNN and television. And it's paid off. He's had some strong runs. His best performance this year, a 4th on the mile at Milwaukee, proving that's no fluke here today, as he is really flying in that orange and white car number 9. And you know, Larry, I'm really surprised that Kent Stauffer is continuing to hang tough in car number 90. That Ford Thunderbird, one of only 2 such marks in this race today, as the other Ford driver, Tim Fedewa, the leading rookie, has been in and out of the pits on 2 separate occasions. I'm really impressed with the run that's going on by car number 90, Kent Stauffer, and we see smoke coming out of the rear of Gary St. Amant's car number 7.
There is the leader, Darrell Waltrip. That Ford that Rob was just talking about of Tim Fedewa is the brand new Gertie engine Ford. It's a V6 that Earl Gertie has been working on developing. They have high hopes for the thing. The numbers that they have seen off of the racetrack have been very impressive, and they anticipate great things from that engine a little later this year. Hey, we'll be back to you just a little later after about a minute here. The man whose most glorious moment in his personal racing career, Gary St. Amant, when he won here at this racetrack in 1990, is limping around the speedway. A lot of smoke coming out from what appears to be the right front. We first thought it might have been a tire problem, but now it appears to be something in the engine. Ralph, what do you think?
Well, Larry, actually it's a couple of problems from what the crew is telling me. Yes, he does think he has a tire going down on the right side, but they also think they might have an oil leak. You can see the crew taking a peek inside through the wheel well, trying to maybe catch a glimpse of some oil dropping down. Gary talking to them through the radio. Now they're going to lift the hood. The engine is still running. The hood on the Rebestos Lumina will come up now, and they'll search a little deeper for that oil leak.
Thanks, Ralph. Well, the laps are going by as Terry Baldry is the next to pull in. The laps are going by on Gary St. Amant, and unlike in 1990, he will not win at Nashville this year. Terry Baldry, another one of the rookie candidates, as Gary St. Amant's engine, we are told, has been turned off. Baldry from Umro, Wisconsin. His best finishes this year have been a pair of 11th places at Columbus and Cayuga up in Canada, but Baldry also comes to a stop silently in the pits. Back up front, it continues to be DW.
Well, he certainly is showing his heels to everybody here this afternoon. I think a lot of the drivers could utilize a caution as Glenn Allen Jr. has come back on pit road in car number 66 without question, an unscheduled pit stop at this point in the race. I'm sure most of the drivers would appreciate a caution if we would have one in the near-term future. I'm sure we would see most of them in for fresh tires.
At the top of the show, we gave you a very thumbnail sketch of the history of the American Speed Association and showed you a picture in Victory Lane in 1972 of Darrell Waltrip. That was the first ever National American Speed Association race, and Darrell Waltrip won it.
Tony Raines continues to be the major story of this race outside of Waltrip's domination in the early going, as he has just picked up another position, moving around defending series champion Bob Seneca. And Gary, he does not really seem to be working all that hard. It's easy when he gets around someone.
Glenn Allen changed right side tires, got a little bit of gas. He is back out. St. Amant has gone behind the pit wall. They're doing some major repair work on Gary St. Amant's car, but now it's simply a matter of gathering points and trying to finish as far up as you possibly can inside the top 20.
Tony Raines has moved up into the 7th position and rides right on the heels of the Nationwide Pontiac of Mike Eddy. Again, we remind you that Mike Eddy has won 3 consecutive American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge Series events after a horrendous start. His first 2 outings didn't even finish the races. He has come on since then with a vengeance. Expected to move straight to the front and a win here this afternoon. That doesn't look like it's going to materialize unless he can find whatever is plaguing the handling of that race car.
Mike Eddy is very, very cagey. He's ASA races. Make no mistake about it. Based on what we've seen from Mike Eddy over the past 19 years in this type of racing, frankly speaking, his status after the halfway point doesn't mean all that much as long as he's on the lead lap. He knows that in this type of racing, usually there's a yellow flag, and Mike Eddy has an amazing, almost uncanny ability to run his fastest laps near the end of the races every weekend.
I think it has a lot to do with attitude. You know, he just puts the pedal down and runs the car however he has to. He's one of that rare breed of drivers that no matter what the car is doing, he'll figure out a way to make it perform at its best. Meanwhile, up in front, we see that leader Darrell Waltrip has just put Kenny Schrader a lap down, Larry.
Well, Ralph, you don't have an easy task right now. Here's a man who was euphoric about being in Nashville last year, and he's got to be depressed right now, Ralph.
Well, Larry, this certainly isn't the conversation he was hoping to have with me. Gary, where does the oil seem to be leaking out of the car?
Well, Ralph, I think we got a broken oil cooler. I don't know if one of the lines come loose or if something, debris got in the cooler or what, but it's definitely making a little slick for this Rebesta Chevrolet.
This racetrack was real slippery yesterday, and it seems to be the same way today. Just how bad is it out there?
Well, I'll tell you, it's getting worse. You know, as the race goes on, the racetrack, the sun's getting hotter, and the racetrack is definitely getting slick. I'll tell you what, I think Darrell, he done something. He out-tricked everybody this weekend, but hopefully maybe one of our ASA guys can come back and beat him.
Well, Gary St. Amant probably thinks he's having the longest day of his career right now, but if this racetrack is anywhere near as slippery as he says it is, it's going to be a long day for some of the guys out there as well.
This is 7th position, still very much up for grabs is Steady Eddie, Mike Eddy, and the exciting Tony Rainman. Tony Raines is moving on the outside. Tony has moved up. We have a spin in corner number 4. It's Glenn Allen Jr. No contact with any other car as we continue to ride inside with Mike Eddy. The yellow flag comes out. You see Tony, he had the advantage as that yellow went out. There's Glenn back underway under his own power, and he is having one long day.
He sure is, and undoubtedly, Larry, he's the only driver unhappy that the yellow has just been displayed on the racetrack, with perhaps the exception of Darrell Waltrip, who's just had things his own way. Now is the first opportunity that these drivers are going to have to make the necessary chassis adjustments. Only one type of tire, so it's not as if they can change compounds, but they can make chassis adjustments.
One stop required, but there is no way that you can go the distance with one stop. We're going to watch for this incident involving Glenn Allen. There it is at the top of the screen.
Coming out of turn number 4, Glenn just got up into the loose stuff. We refer to it as the marbles, and he spins. Fortunately, he didn't hit anything or anybody.
Pit stops are wholesale. All of the leaders are now coming in. You can see everyone pulling into their respective pit stall. There's the number 53 of Hansen. We've had a crash at the entrance to the pits. It is, I believe, Tim Fedowa in one of the 2 Ford Thunderbirds entered here today. There is Tim Fedowa crashed along the inside wall as the crowd cheers because Darrell Waltrip is the first to leave, but Tim Fedowa has a sudden stop to his afternoon. He was struggling with the engine, and it was a traffic jam coming into the pits. There is the barricade that Tim Fedowa hit as he caught the end of the pit wall just as he was entering the pits, and major damage on that Ford.
What an incredible sight. He hit that barricade, Larry, and it looked like a geyser of sand just erupted from that thing, and water. We see on the entrance to pit road, there's a lot of water on the racetrack. Amazingly, he's able to drive that machine back onto pit road as all of the leaders have now been in and back onto the racetrack. Everybody came in. Darrell Waltrip had an outstanding pit stop and will reassume the lead just the way he went in. Harold Fair is second, but the big change, Mike Eddy's pit crew did an outstanding job. He'll run third when we go back to green.
Actually, Mike Eddy's pit crew, as well as Mike Eddy, well, they've been around just a little bit. It really showed here in this first pit stop under yellow flag at Nashville. This is the Delco Voyager 250 from the Nashville Motor Raceway. We are under yellow flag again. There have been several yellow flags in the first 80 laps. Ralph Shaheen is standing by with one of the latest victims of this yellow flag.
Tim Fedowa has been battling problems all day today, and Tim, something we haven't seen quite often in racing. You had a problem entering the pit lane.
Yeah, we were coming in kind of hard. We had some pretty bad tires, and Ford Thunderbird, we got in a little bit, they blew a motor a few laps back. We got in a little oil up there at the top of the pit, and it just lost it, and it went into the fence.
And a more unfrustrating point, Larry, is the fact that he debuted this car here this weekend.
Yeah, Ralph, there are still very high hopes for this race car. Earl Gertie is one of the most outstanding engine builders in America, and he's been working with the Ford Motor Company to construct this power plant specifically for the American Speed Association. And it certainly will be around for a long time. Now, there is Darrell Waltrip. You heard Rob comment just before we went to break that the team and he had a terrific pit stop. They are making a second supplemental pit stop under this yellow flag, and the hood is coming up. Now, it could simply be a chassis adjustment. It is not necessarily an indication that there's something wrong with the engine of this car.
Well, ASA cars are very technologically advanced. The shock absorbers are multiply adjustable. They may have thought about doing something, Gary. He came in, they looked at the hood, they pulled the pins out and stuck them right back in. Nothing.
Well, there was a moment of visual frustration on behalf of one of the crew members as he went to that hood. Looked like he was going to pull the pins. You can see Harold Fair is the new race leader now, and he looked very concerned about that. All things may not be rosy in the Western Auto pit right now.
Nothing Harold Fair would rather do than win his first ever championship in 1991. It took Bob Seneker 17 years to accomplish that, and Harold doesn't want it to go quite that long. Mike Eddy, as we said, is in third position. Scott Hansen is fourth. Johnny Benson has suddenly come to fifth position with great pit work. Bob Seneker is sixth. Ken Stauffer, who had moved into the third spot, is in seventh position.
There is Gary St. Amant, a winner here a year ago, as we mentioned, had very serious mechanical problems. About 5 minutes ago, lost several laps while the rest of the field was at green. They refired that Ribesto's car, and Gary St. Amant is going back into the race, but several laps back.
Last night I sat at dinner with some of the folks from Ribesto's, and they said, if you can't win, at least get us on camera. Well, I think Gary would rather do both, but he is getting that machine on camera today.
On board with Harold Fair, one of the two drivers, the other being Mike Eddy, who is showing you these shots from in-car of this nearly 0.6 mile oval. I mean, it shows that it is not a full 3/4 mile racetrack, but I'll swear, the top of the banking where on occasion you have to run, it's a long ways away. This is one of the major league racetracks among short tracks in America. Obviously, unless it's a mile in length, they don't call it a super speedway. But this is a killer racetrack. This is a tough one.
Well, this is the view that you want if you've got a camera in your race car, and that is with the entire field bunched up behind you, not in front. And that's the lucky position of car number 81, Harold Fair.
Ralph Shaheen, you can bring us up to date on what's going on with DW.
First two things, Larry. We had the pins go in the hood. That was falling out of the hoods, and they just replaced the pins and got going again. A little later on, when they get back into racing, we're going to show you his tires and what kind of wear he's getting.
Well, we commented that Waltrip looked like he was playing the conservative role down on the bottom of the racetrack, and apparently it was not conservative enough. Up front, black is the color. The black number 81 of Harold Fair. He leads this race now, and Mike Eddy, the veteran, going after immortality, we said at the top of the show. Let's at least call it an all-time ASA record. He's going to tie it today. If he can win, it would be the 4th time in a row.
Mike Eddy smells the lead without question in car number 88, that Nationwide Pontiac, looking the best it has all day. He goes to the high side of the racetrack. We've got cameras in both of these machines. We're going to look at each other. Eddy drops down low, and we've got a challenge for the point.
Mike Eddy in the Nationwide Pontiac moves to the inside of Harold Fair in the black, similarly painted car number 81, and Harold Fair sees Mike Eddy go by. So at lap number 88, the man who has won the last 3 races in a row, that's 3 of the 5 championship events in the 1991 American Speed Association season, asserts himself at the front. He now leads the pack.
Looking over the hood of Harold Fair's car number 81, and you can see Scott Hansen climbing back into the frame in car number 53.
Harold Fair running second, roof cam. Average qualifying speed here was about 110 miles per hour, meaning that the cars are reaching a top speed just before they shut into the corners, perhaps approaching 150. You can see the self-cleaning lens.
There's Darrell Waltrip making his way through lap traffic, picking machines off one at a time, moving to the outside of Dennis Vogel's red and yellow car number 51, and he is not that far behind the leader. Just about half a lap to make up between himself and Mike Eddy.
It's likely that Waltrip is going to need a yellow flag, and if the first 90 laps are any indication, he's going to get one. But the idea now is to be patient and to get by as many cars as he possibly can during this green flag segment. So should the yellow fly one more time, he'll be able to close up that much closer to race leaders Mike Eddy and Harold Fair. Darrell Waltrip is currently in 13th place.
At the moment, he's running right behind Dave Jackson.
Well, there is still more, I guess. Ralph, take it away. Go.
Well, Larry, we wanted to show you the tires that came off of Darrell Waltrip's car. Now, trust me, it is hot down here in the pits at Nashville. Now, the one thing the competitors were really worried about was a lot of buildup on these tires. And you can see it. Yeah, he's got some buildup on here, but nothing too severe. Not a lot worse than they were expecting to find here. So for at least Darrell Waltrip, his tires aren't that bad.
Pat Bordow in that Petty painted blue and hot pink car on the inside of the track is being lapped by the race leaders, as well as Darrell Waltrip, who is working his way through the field. Waltrip is fast approaching the top 10. Again, he led the majority of the first 80 laps of this race. Had to make an on-scheduled pit stop during yellow flag conditions. Fortunately for him, had to go to the back of the pack, and Waltrip is the man with the highest mountain to climb right now.
You can see on that graphic that Darrell Waltrip's last ASA pole position came at Anderson Speedway, a quarter mile, and we've got trouble in turn 4.
Major crash in corner number 4, not because of the severity of the crash, but because of the people involved. That's Tim Steele spinning. Harold Fair is a part of that. He is the damaged car sitting sideways on the racetrack. Bob Seneker is backing down the front straightaway. He was involved. This was a crash among our race leaders. Harold Fair looks like he is out of this race.
Bob Seneker was able to drive away from the incident, apparently undamaged. And now we're inside of Harold Fair's car. We cannot see, at least from this perspective, the tail end of that automobile, but it has been heavily damaged as he made hard contact with the outside wall in between turns 3 and 4. And Larry, now you can see a little bit better the damage to that race car.
Maybe we'll have an opportunity to look at this race. This is how it happened, looking out the back of Harold Fair's car. Now, we cannot see it develop, but you're going to see the collision.
I think we're inside Mike Eddy's car. I'm not sure. See the Nationwide auto parts on the bumper? Now, look at Harold Fair. Very strange, Larry. It did not look like he lost control. It looked as if maybe something broke in the rear end of that race car, as it was what we refer to as a snap spin. He was running straight ahead, in control, and all of a sudden he was headed backwards and right straight into the wall.
Maybe we can look at that again. There was something strange flying up in the air. You can see it in front of Mike Eddy. Up along the wall, there's Fair colliding with the fence. Here comes Seneker through. Scott Hansen almost lost control. Seneker spins, hits nothing. On the outside, that's Johnny Benson Jr. coming to a stop. He was almost involved.
Dennis Lampman up at the top of the racetrack, and he's been up in the top 6.
There's Steele. Steele had nowhere to go. Musgrave simply sneaks through in that two-tone blue car. Meanwhile, everybody is pitting underneath this yellow flag. Now let's watch for this piece of debris, see if it's a factor in this.
And there's Fair going sideways. There it is. I wonder what that was. Apparently something came off another race car in front of Mike Eddy, or perhaps something off Eddy's car.
It did not look like it contributed to that incident, although it's possible because the timing was certainly strange on that debris. Certainly was not from Harold Fair's car, but a very disappointing moment for one of the top car driver combinations entered in today's race. He looked like he was a threat to win, but Harold Fair's day is over. We'll be back with more from Nashville after these words. That is Harold Fair's Mack Tools Hutter Heiskin Chevrolet on the wrong end of a wrecker as a result of this incident. Watch, and more importantly, listen as he enters corner number 3. A significant wall contact by Harold Fair on the outside. There's Lampman going by. He had a little bit of damage on the front of his car. All the water that splashed up when Fair backed in there could have been fuel, could have been water, and Ralph is standing by with Harold right now.
Well, Harold, you were able to climb out of the car. I assume that means you're okay.
Oh, yeah, we're okay. Mack Tools Chevy was really running today. We're just kind of feeling it out. We made a change at 6 o'clock this morning, changed all 4 springs in it. Car was working well. We just had to find the right stagger in it. We're just hanging around there, you know, waiting for another 100 laps. But what do you do? Somebody dumped some oil or rear end dope or something on the track, and I got into it, and I just couldn't hold it.
Tough day for Harold Fair. Comes to a finish in a thrilling way.
Well, again, it was interesting, that piece of debris that we saw flying over the roof of Mike Eddy was flying in the air as Harold Fair was crashing. Now, Harold says he thinks there may have been some moisture on the surface. Whether or not that was something connected, don't know. But it was certainly very ironic that you saw something flying through the air as Harold Fair made contact. And here's another angle of the Fair incident. There's Harold entering corner number 3, getting sideways and then just backing into the wall. You can see there's moisture. Now, this is from a roof cam. And it's always impossible to tell that if it's just the moisture that splashed up from the contact, which probably it is. It's unlikely that moisture from the racetrack would have gotten up that high, but you never know.
I don't know, Larry. It was there before he even made contact with the wall, which may be an indication that it might have been something from Eddie's car.
Well, with 102 of 250 laps down, the new race leader is the pole setter, Scott Hansen. Mike Eddy has moved up to second, and points leader Johnny Benson is third. Former national champions of the American Speed Association include Mike Eddy 5 times, Mark Martin, who won this track championship 3 times in a row, make this season championship 3 times in a row, once in the late 1970s. Rusty Wallace is a former ASA champion, as is Dick Trickle, and most recently Butch Miller. The defending champion is Bob Seneker, and though involved in an incident that precipitated the last yellow flag, he still has a chance today as we go back to green, and Scott Hansen buries the throttle. Gary St. Amant has serious problems finding the handle as he goes into the number 1 corner. Cars are scattering, and what the result of that is that Scott Hansen turns out having about a straightaway lead.
The second result is that Johnny Benson Jr. has moved into second position, moving to the high side and taking that spot away from Mike Eddy. Eddy comes back to challenge on the low side now in car number 88 as they put car number 75, Scott Walters, in the center of the sandwich.
Anxious moment for Scott Walters, but he holds his line. He remains steady and true and straight in the middle of the racetrack, and Eddy and Benson are still side by side despite each having passed Scott on different sides.
And we're taking a look now back in the field at car number 17, the machine of Darrell Waltrip, as he has Dennis Lampman minus the hood in tow as those two try to work their way back up toward the front of the racetrack.
Waltrip has actually done very well. He is now, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10th in line on the racetrack. He has moved inside the top 10. Darrell Waltrip is coming.
What a tremendous restart for Scott Hansen, as very quickly he has built a 2-second lead. That's as large as we've seen all afternoon. And Larry, something that very definitely could come into play after overcast most of the early part of this race. The sun is shining brightly and it is into the 90s.
That's John Benson in the white and red trim, number 21. Race driver is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He comes from a rich racing tradition and heritage. His father, little John Benson Sr., was one of the scourges of the Midwest and the East Coast. About 25 years ago, his specialty was super modified racing. Then he switched to late models. He was very strong there, too.
He's doing battle with another second-generation driver, Jay Sauter, in car number 1. Look at Sauter move to the low side, reins up high, and more trouble.
That's the number 86 car.
Kenny Adams, the rookie driver of the AutoSite Pontiac, the driver from Willowick, Ohio, making his debut with his Nick Vitt-owned race car in 1991. Now, several seasons ago, he ran a local late model class for the same car owner. Nick has campaigned in ASA for 4 seasons, and Kenny has given the car its best run in its 4 years with the circuit.
So Scott Hansen, who really had a great breakaway at the last green flag, finds it all for naught now as the green flag segment only lasts about 4 or 5 laps. This is our 6th yellow flag of the day here at Nashville. Mike Eddy, you'll get a reprieve now. Mike Eddy gets to move right up on the tailpipes of Scott Hansen. John Benson Jr., who's really had a rough past 15 minutes, he's got to be thinking, wow, I'm glad I have a chance to breathe. He's almost been involved in a crash. He got stuck behind Gary St. Amant at the last green flag, and now things will calm down for him.
Also 6 drivers out of the race, and officially out. Car number 81, Harold Fair, after that incident in turn 3. Jeff Neal out early. Car number 55, the leading rookie contender, Tim Fedewa, has pulled his machine behind the wall, as has his nearest pursuer in the Pat Schauer Memorial Rookie Award, Terry Baldry. Car number 18, Dean South, another rookie, is out, as is Dave Stamm in car number 22.
Well, Mike Eddy in the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac has a chance to tie Butch Miller for history, to win 4 ASA races in a row. How about it, Mike? What are your chances?
I think that I got a good chance of doing it. We didn't qualify fastest, but we're in our usual spot, and it's not usually the guy who starts on the pole that wins the race. It's a lot of consistency and how much you slow down. If you keep running the same speed all day, maybe I will be the fastest car tomorrow. I don't know. We just got to wait and see.
It's possible that one of the secrets of Mike Eddy is a guy by the name of Ed Howe, who won a lot of races as a race driver, both on dirt and pavement, also built a lot of cars. And Ralph, you got him right now. What's he doing? Taking credit for this Mike Eddy run?
Well, actually, we're with Howie Leto, the crew chief for the Baker Racing entry, is Scott Hansen, our leader. Now, Howie, we've had the sun show up. We've lost a lot of the humidity, and the gray skies have gone away. How is this affecting the handling of Scott's car?
Well, this track, traditionally, cars get very loose, and the heat and the sunshine aren't helping matters any. Most of the cars out here are quite loose. It's also kind of hard on the drivers. You know, next time we pit, we'll be giving Scott water and wet rags and so on. He keeps himself in good shape, you know. We won't have any problem, but I'm sure a lot of the guys out there are pretty warm right now.
That was obviously Howie Leto, but I guess Ed Howe is going to appreciate all the free pub anyway.
Well, he sure will. Howie, of course, is kind of recognized in ASA circles as the real rookie groom, as he has taken 4 rookie drivers to Rookie of the Year honors, including Scott Hansen, as recently as 1989. Other drivers included the late Pat Shower, after whom the Rookie of the Year honor has been posthumously named, and Ted Musgrave. And if you get a real close look at Mike Eddy's car number 88, as we are now continuing to look at on the racetrack, the leader, Scott Hansen, Eddy has a very thin stripe of green around that white or that yellow car number 88, typifying the Ed Howe color green.
Ready to go back to green flag racing one more time. The green flickers, and Scott Hansen buries the throttle as he roars into corner number 1. He sees the man in black, the gold trim right behind him.
The veteran runs second, Mike Eddy, and a bunch of kids battling for 3rd, 4th, and 5th position. Points leader Johnny Benson, Jay Sauter, and Tony Raines really going at it.
Sure would like you to say he's a kid. Joe Scheer is right now in 6th position. He's in a black number 36, and Joe Scheer is one of the veteran ASA race drivers. And Scheer dodges Kenny Adams as they go into corner number 1. He holds on to 6th position. Up front, Mike Eddy is now challenging Hansen on the outside. Eddy racing for it.
Side by side, Hansen with the fast line at the bottom of the racetrack. The quick way around. Mike Eddy is there to challenge. He'll not pick up the lead that time by. Who's deeper into turn number 1? Still by the slightest of margins. It's Hansen down at the bottom of the racetrack, and Eddy drops in behind.
The Midland, Michigan driver, traditionally from Cow, Michigan. That's all up there in the central part of the Lower Peninsula. He's long been a mainstay of the American Speed Association, and certainly the 1991 season looms as perhaps his best ever.
Those two drivers separating themselves from the 3rd place battle between Tony Raines, who's appropriated that position, from Johnny Benson, and Jay Sauter.
Side by side there, fender to fender, going into corner number 3 on this half-mile racetrack. Eddy looked like he had the line, but Hansen running smoother down in the bottom. But right now, Mike Eddy is definitely out horsepowering Hansen, but can he handle around?
The heat is beginning to evidence itself, Larry. The last time the leaders paced 21 seconds flat yesterday. Scott Hansen's pole position qualifying time 19.773 seconds. They're a little over a second off of qualifying times from yesterday.
Scott Hansen continues to lead. You see the leaders' taillights from the second running Mike Eddy, and Mike seems to have cooled his jets just a little bit. We are only 120 laps in. We're just past the halfway point in this 250-lap race. Eddy runs second. There you see, first and second on your screen. Tony Raines, a terrific run today. He has come all the way from 23rd position, and Tony Raines, the Pennsylvania driver, runs 3rd, and it is a closing 3rd. 4th position is very much up for grabs right now. Wisconsin's Jay Sauter has it, and in 5th position is Michigan's John Benson Jr.
You can see that time as the leaders exited turn number 2, Tony Raines is reeling in the front runners. Mike Eddy, the man with the mission. After the 2nd race of the season, the Nationwide 400 at Salem, he was mired in 18th position in the point standings. 3 consecutive victories later, he's climbed to 4th in the points, and he'd like another victory here this afternoon.
Tony Raines, whom you will see in the picture just momentarily, he is only about 10 car lengths behind Mike Eddy. There he is driving a brand new team this year. Now, Tony is the one on the team who has the most ASA experience, but the team has very little, and he, frankly speaking, expected that it would take till the mid-season for them to be competitive in this ETR Racing and E&L Brookridge Old. But he has been getting seemingly faster with every race. They were very optimistic yesterday rather, and it's paying off today, Sunday afternoon.
Last fall, the AC-Delco Challenge Series visited Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh for the very first time ever, and a fellow was there by the name of Ernie Roselli. Ernie saw the ASA Series go, said, I wanted to go racing, hired Tony Raines, and this is what he's got.
It is really tightening up front. It is now a three-car fight. That is Scott Hansen on the inside. Mike Eddy, he sees Tony Raines coming in the mirror. Mike says, I got to go now if I'm going to protect my position. Raines has caught them.
Raines is running phenomenally well. After the restart, he was 3.5 seconds back at 6th position. 10 laps later, he's challenging for 2nd. Mike Eddy had better hustle, or they're going to be chasing the guy from formerly Northern Indiana, now Southern Pennsylvania.
Tony had the advantage of running in the preferred groove down in the bottom, but now if he wants to continue his climb to the front, he's got to go to the outside groove. No problem.
Out the back window of Mike Eddy's Nationwide Pontiac, you can see that Tony Raines has easily gotten past Scott Hansen and very soon can challenge for that top position.
So Tony Raines becomes the star at mid-race of this Nashville Motor Speedway American Speed Association event. Tony Raines is Mr. Speed here with 127 laps down, about 125 laps to go.
The first race of the season was tremendously embarrassing for Tony Raines. Ran a tremendous race on the Columbus Motor Speedway, brought the machine to 2nd position at the checkered flag, only to be disqualified due to an illegal engine during tech inspection. The engine builder that they had hired came down, looked at it, and said, my fault, guys. These men do nothing about it. But Tony has been a bit embarrassed about that, Larry, ever since then. Really not a negative reflection on him. He's a straight-ahead young guy, and certainly, as we've seen today, a tremendous young racing talent.
Tony Raines is a man who he expected to be in this position, but very few of the people around him in his early 20s expected him to be there. He kept asking Ray Dillon, for whom he was doing some racing work, hey, I want to drive race cars. I want to move up to ASA. And Ray kept saying no. And finally, he could say no longer. Right now, that's beginning to look like a pretty darn good decision.
Yeah, we take a look out the back window of Mike Eddy's car number 88 as Raines draws ever closer in car number 25. He took some flack for this paint job, baby blue, if you will, and yellow. But it certainly stands out on the race course. Make no mistake, easy to spot.
Mike Eddy, once he assumed the lead, seems to actually have slowed just a bit. Perhaps Mike is being just a tad conservative as the front 3 cars, after a heated battle, now run reasonably comfortably with Eddy, Raines, and Hansen, the first 3. There is the number 21 car of John Benson Jr., and seemingly he has slowed a little bit. He's off of the rapid pace that he was running a few laps ago.
On the restart, the Valvoline Chevrolet of Benson was in the 3rd position. He's fallen well out of the top 10. He's now running in 11th, and about a full straightaway behind the 10th place car number 17 of Darrell Waltrip, who's really battling at the moment with Dennis Lampman and Joe Shear for position. Benson swapped crew chiefs over the winter in an interesting move. He was Rookie of the Year, and car number 84, of course, Bob Seneker, the 1990 national champion. And an interesting move, they changed crew chiefs, and it has proven to both of their advantage, I think, this season, as what was a little bit of conflict sometimes between the 2 crews has really settled down.
The leaders in heavy traffic, that's Tom Jones in the white number 0, and Dennis Vogel, both long-time ASA drivers, moving to the inside as they see the leaders approach. Vogel's got to be smiling as he sees Tony Raines go by. He says, hey, I don't see that guy with the leaders all that often. I'm happy. He's one of us.
Do you think, Larry, that perhaps Mike Eddy is running just as hard as he needs to keep Raines and Hansen behind him, perhaps preserving the tires of this race?
I absolutely think that Mike Eddy is basically controlling the pace of this race right now. Apparently Hansen wasn't running quite as quickly as Mike wanted him to do, so he put the pass on it, took a few laps, and once he got the lead, he actually pulled his horns in just a little bit. The mid-race recap, the AC-Delco Challenge Series here at Nashville. The leader is Mike Eddy. We have had 6 lead changes among 4 drivers. Mike Eddy, the current race leader. 6 cautions for 27 laps, and 6 cars are now out of the race.
Tony Raines now moves again right in behind Mike Eddy as they're in similar traffic. They've gone underneath local driver Tom Harrington and a former professional football player now to the outside of John Olson in car number 44. And Raines seems to be content to sit in that position. You know, he's made his way to the front, and I think he too, Larry, is biding his time. All 3 of those drivers are showing great restraint at the moment.
There is Darrell Waltrip to update you on Waltrip. He has moved in to the number 5 position. Darrell Waltrip has definitely gained ground on the race leaders. He is only about 2 corners, the distance of either 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 behind Mike Eddy. Mike Eddy is a little more steady than Larry Newber is right now, but Mike Eddy continues to lead. And Darrell Waltrip is more than lurking in the shadows. He's charging up. Well, Ralph Shaheen is following this race also, and he is in Mike Eddy's pits. What about it, Ralph? Any insight on Eddy's plans right now?
Well, we're going to ask Howard Thomas, his crew chief. Howard, can Mike keep up this pace that he's running right now, or is he right where he wants to be?
Well, he's kind of taking it easy right now. The car's a little loose. It's real slippery out there. The track surface is real hot. He's just kind of holding his own.
Is he holding up physically inside the car? Is everything all right?
Yeah, it's pretty warm in there, but he's doing okay.
Well, Mike Eddy can always do better when he's out front.
Absolutely, Ralph. And Mike Eddy has been out front most of the 1991 season. We mentioned that 6 cars are out of this race. Among them, for you ASA regulars, as we're looking at Dennis Lampman, perhaps he will be the 7th car of the race. Lampman was involved in the incident that took Harold Fair out of the race. And Dennis Lampman, having his finest season in ASA racing at A1 Service Company Pontiac, is crawling back to the pits. He stops at the entrance to corner number 3, and he is out of this race. Among the 6 other cars confirmed out of competition, car number 5 is Jeff Neal. 14 is Terry Baldry, and we'll run the rest of them down for you when we come back from this commercial break. We're at Nashville. We're live. This is ASA. Pitsar Supermarket. Ralph Shaheen is there shopping.
We're with Mike Eddy, and he's picked up a couple of tires. A little bit of trouble getting the tires away. He took on right side tires, and he almost clipped Tony Raines as he exited the pit lane. Tony Raines beat him out of the pit. Eddy got right side tires, and they did decide to change the stagger a little bit. Let me get over here to Howard real quick. Howard, did you change the stagger on that set? Well, he's talking to him right now. If you can hang with me for 1 second, we'll see what Mike says to him off of the radio. He's talking to Mike right now. We'll see if we can get back in here to Howard. Well, I'll tell you what, they're still talking. We'll come back to you.
Hey, Ralph, it was a great pit stop, but guess who is right in front of Mike Eddy? Pan a little bit to the right, and there is a black and silver and bright orange and white car. Yep, the number is 17. He's led and won a few races here at Nashville. Darrell Waltrip has now moved ahead of Mike Eddy. Now, we don't know at this moment, because pit stops are not completely over, who will turn out as the lead car, but it appears as though it will probably be Scott Hansen, followed by Bob Seneca. Yeah, there it is. Now we can confirm it. The Green Bay, Wisconsin driver, Scott Hansen, running occasional Winston Cup races this year, as well as some other outstanding unsanctioned late model races, will assume the lead here, and Bob Seneca, too, with a great pit stop, is now second. So the old veterans, the people who have won most of these races, and they keep creeping back up to the top, Rob.
Oh, they sure do. And this is just typical Bob Seneca style racing, and that is be there to the midpoint and then charge to the front. He currently runs in the 2nd position. Raines with a good pit stop is 3rd. The best pit stop of the bunch, as you've already alluded to. Darrell Waltrip, he's in 4th position. We're showing Mike Eddy now in 5th. Jay Sauter is in the 6th spot. Johnny Benson, who's having tire problems, needed that yellow flag. He's in 7th. Joe Shear is in the 8th position in car number 36, and Tim Steele is still on the lead lap, hanging tough in car number 89. He's in 9th. 2 other automobiles remaining on the lead lap. Kent Stauffer in car number 90. He's been there all day, and the 45 machine of Dave Jackson. We're still showing those cars unofficially, 11 of them as on the lead lap.
Bob Seneca, we were just looking at, is the all-time leader in victories in ASA. He has won 66 times. Mike Eddy has moved into 3rd position this year, getting around Dick Trickle. He has won 31 times in his ASA career.
Well, the leaders come to the start-finish line with a number of lap cars to contend with as they drop down into turn number 1. As the drivers were instructed in the meeting, the fast line later on in the race moves up on the racetrack. So the lapped automobiles of Tom Jones and Terry Baldry drop down low. Scott Hansen still has Kenny Adams and Tom Harrington right in front of him. And Bob Senecker suddenly starting to show some strength in car number 84 as he runs right in on the back bumper.
And there's Waltrip moving in. And what happened on that move was that Kenny Adams went to the outside of Tom Harrington, not realizing it was one of the race leaders right behind him. Hansen had to jump on the binders, exactly a situation like Ken Schrader found himself in yesterday's practice, which deposited him very rudely on the outside wall.
Darrell Waltrip boxed in beautifully by car number 25, Tony Raines, as he forced the NASCAR veteran to the outside of Tom Harrington. But something that does not bode well for everybody else. I saw Waltrip drive that car right down below the yellow line in turn number 1. It's handling well.
I imagine that we got a lot of race leaders very unhappy with Kenny Adams. He got himself stuck out there in the racing lane, and they've had to zig and zag to get around him and John Olson. Now Olson in the Terry Labonte painted light blue number 44 is running the proper racing line to be lapped. Adams finally is able to drop down low. The leaders do get by. No collisions.
So far, no real surprises in this race, Larry. We did expect the front row to fare well. They continue to run well. They've experienced their share of minor problems, but they continue to be in the top 4. Mike Eddy has dropped to 5th position, and for the moment, the front-running quintet seems to be separating themselves from the 6th-place car of Jay Sauter.
It is Hansen. It is Senecker beginning to show signs he would like to lead this race. 3rd is Tony Raines, the youngster that, if there is a surprise in the top 5, it is he. Darrell Waltrip is 4th, and Mike Eddy, looking for win number 4, and that's in a row, is 5th.
Scott Hansen down on the bottom side of the racetrack as they exited turn 2 and headed down that 600-foot back straightaway. He's forced Bob Senecker to the high groove. Senecker doesn't seem to mind as he's moved alongside as they come off turn number 4. And he just may have the advantage as they go down into the first turn in a battle for 3rd place as well.
The high side is certainly the longer way around, but you can keep the RPMs up. Hansen slips and slides coming out of corner number 2, bounces over the tunnel, but manages to stay off of the left side of Bob Senecker. And we have our next new race leader. Bob Senecker, the all-time race leader in ASA, takes over here at Nashville.
I talked to Ted Musgrave yesterday afternoon. As I said, he had pretty much conceded the race to car number 17, Darrell Waltrip. He said that Darrell Waltrip had something in the rear, and we think he's got what's called a ratchet rear end, which is works like a limited slip differential, allows both tires to keep good bite on the racetrack.
And he is once again beginning to show signs that, hey, I would like to get to the front. Waltrip has his work cut out for him right now. We've seen Tony Raines be among the fastest cars on the track during the last 30 or 40 laps that run under green. Tony has seemingly backed off of the pace a little bit, but not enough to allow Waltrip to get by.
I think Waltrip is smart enough and shrewd enough to know that we're still relatively early in this race, still over 50 laps to go, and a lot of time, a lot of things can yet transpire. Most of the drivers, without doubt, anticipate at least one more caution flag. They don't want to run the risk of wearing out a set of tires now with the possibility of a lengthy green, which could put them a lap down.
In point of fact, we have 92 laps now to go. Most of these cars probably can go the rest of this race in the fuel that they have. But if we see another yellow, as less and less cars fall off of, or more and more cars fall off of the lead lap, it is likely all the leaders will pit if we have another yellow.
A number of the drivers were a bit reluctant to talk about their pit strategies for today. But as we remind you once again, as an economizing measure, the driver is only permitted to change 2 tires, any 2, on any given yellow flag pit stop. And most of the drivers did reveal to us that what they anticipated was a change of 3 right side sets of tires and perhaps just a single set of left side Goodyear Racing Eagles. Bob Senecker at the moment is stretching his advantage slightly over Scott Hansen. Last lap, 21.88 seconds. So they're not running nearly as fast as they were earlier. No doubt the heat has a lot to do with it. Waltrip is still pressuring Tony Raines for that 3rd position, but that kid is just not going to give it to him.
A patient Darrell Waltrip is pressing as best that you can at this stage of a race when you're attempting to preserve your tires. The crafty veteran that Waltrip is, perhaps he feels inside the cockpit, hey, guys, I have made my last pit stop. The tires I have on now, they're the ones that are taking me to the finish. Then again, maybe not. But Waltrip knows this track so well, and be rest assured that Waltrip is working with a whole lot more than his right foot in his hands. That head is a grinding away.
That time into turn number 3, Darrell went in low and let the machine drift up ever so slightly. Raines was not in intimidated as he continues to hang tough on the high side of the racetrack. He has a car that seems to come off the corners extremely well. Darrell's works at its best at the end of the straightaway, Larry.
Waltrip on the low side, sliding out of corner number 4. Now he asserts himself, and the crowd roars its approval. There is no question that he is the hometown favorite, Darrell Waltrip, who has won so many times on the Nashville Motor Raceway. Incidentally, speaking about winning often, I want to make a call to Mike Alexander, who many of you recognize as certainly potentially one of the most outstanding late model race drivers in the country. He has won 4 of 7 races here of the local weekly Saturday night races, although after last night's victory he was disqualified, and it was very depressing because he also entered this race with an ASA car which did not fit the template, and he was disqualified from this race. So Mike has had in one hand a victorious weekend and one that's self-gratifying, but on the other hand a very disappointing one too. But Mike certainly appears to be back.
Bob Seneker's lead now over second position. Scott Hansen has grown to 2.8 seconds. Visually, it doesn't appear that large. I think it's going to shrink dramatically as Seneker moves in on some lap traffic once again. He's the real grassroots kind of guy, Larry. He said his favorite food when asked, what do you think? A hamburger.
Yep. I think that's probably a very popular cuisine in Nashville. He's going to definitely be right at home here and at home on TNN. Seneker continues to lead in heavy traffic. He looks to the second lane, has thoughts about lane number 3. He says, nope, I'm going to drop down low. I see Hansen there, and they're giving me room on the low side, and my car's working there. So Seneker now decides to go to the high side of Dave Jackson, the Cincinnati, Ohio driver, in that orange number 45, and he finds plenty of racing room there and continues his march through the lap cars.
Lap machines to contend with. The margin has shrunk from 2.8 seconds 2 laps ago to 0.8 of a second the last time around, and it is even smaller this time by the start-finish line.
Mike Eddy runs in 5th position right now. He seems to have lost a little ground to the race leaders, but we still have quite a ways to go. Ralph, what do you think? Is he in trouble, or is this just his race pace?
Well, Larry, take a look at these tires. These are the ones that just came off of Mike Eddy's car. Remember the ones we showed you from Darrell Waltrip and all the gunk he had built up on those? We said those weren't too bad. Look how smooth these are. They almost look brand new. This is the set that had just come off of Mike Eddy's car in his last pit stop. Now, we also asked his crew chief if he was going to need more gas. He said, no, sir, we can go the rest of the way on fuel, but we might stop once more for more of these. Now, Mike Eddy also got beat out of the pits, and he wasn't too happy about that. His crew chief said, yeah, he's real mad about it. It'll just make him drive harder, they said.
Uh-oh. We have seen that scenario many times in ASA racing. One of the things that every other competitor on the racetrack does not want to do for any reason is to make Mike Eddy angry. When he's angry, he's at his best.
Well, it's happened several times, and Rex Robbins, the president of the American Speed Association, has a ton of stories to tell. Mike was roundly booed in the last ASA race at the home track of Bob Seneker when he was introduced, and Rex said, hey, we might as well just give Eddy the money. When he gets booed like that, he gets mad and he's going to win, and he did.
Well, there was a time when they called Mike the friendly polar bear. That was a reference to his size. He's very quiet, except when he steps behind the wheel of a race car, he's a lion. This is the ilk of late model race car that really is the standard of this type of racing in America. From California to Maine, if you're racing this type of car, there's always the natural comparison to, well, how's it compared to an ASA car? And if it's one of the most potent locally running late model stock cars, they say, well, this is an ASA type car. This is what everyone thinks about when they think of late model stock car racing in America, particularly the cars that run on the short tracks.
Bob Seneker continues to lead. Just before the break, Larry, we were talking about fuel economy. In fact, these ASA cars are capable with these very efficient V6 engines of running about 100 miles, which would be nearly 200 laps on this racetrack. So fuel should not really be a factor.
The first 5 positions are running reasonably calmly, but 6th position is right now being contested. That's young John Benson Jr., again the points leader coming into today's race, and the crafty, wily, silent one, the old veteran Joe Scheer. Here's a man who speaks not that often off the racetrack, but when he gets on the racetrack behind the wheel, speaks very loudly.
Joe only made about a half dozen AC-Delco Challenge Series appearances last year. And when I reviewed the records, he finished in the top 5 almost every time. And if he didn't, he was running there when he had mechanical problems. So he's still a threat to win today. And right now, Johnny Benson has his hands full defending that 6th position from Joe Shear.
Benson really hasn't been quite as competitive this afternoon as he has been most of this season. The reason why he's leading the point standings is not because he's won a lot of races, but he's consistently run in the top 3 or 4 and been in a position to win every race. He's not really been in that position today.
No, he hasn't. And this team really was loose right out of the starting gate at Columbus with the new chief, crew chief Chip Caputo. These two guys apparently hit it off, and a lot of folks have had trouble working with Chip. Not because he's a bad sort of guy, but because he's an extremely demanding taskmaster when he's building a race car. Benson works equally hard, and I think some days those guys tried to outdo each other to see who could put in a longer day.
Well, just when it looks like that John Benson has strong-armed, or make that Joe Shear has strong-armed John Benson, Johnny moves back to the outside and takes over. So John Benson moves back into the 6th position. Now it looks like it's finally calmed down. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with the Seneca, Hansen, Waltrip, Rains, and Eddy continue to run very smoothly.
I see some damage to the right rear corner of Benson's car from an earlier incident.
Now, here is a list of all the cars out of the race to this point. Jeff Neal and his Buick, the Xerox number 5, Harold Fair, and that spectacular crash outside of corner number 4. Dean South, the Dayton, Ohio driver, Scott Kaiser, Ted Musgrave, who many people thought would be one of the drivers to defeat in this race today, and Springfield, Ohio's John Wilson. Those are among the cars that are out. Tim Fido was out of the race for a while in that brand new Ford Thunderbird, but he has returned to this contest, and Terry Baldry also is listed as a car right now with a DNF. Tim Raines continues to run strong in the top 5, although he is no longer challenging for the lead as he once was. Ralph, how about it? Is this his race, or has something gone awry?
This is his car, Ernie Roselli. Ernie, is he feeling a little tired inside? I mean, he had a long way to work his way up to the front.
Yeah, we had a bit of trouble on the first pit stop. Fuel neck pushed through, and we had trouble getting fuel in the car. Right now, he's a bit loose. We're going to try to tighten the stagger up next pit stop.
But how about him physically? How is he doing?
He's pretty warm out there. He doesn't run with power steering, so it's awful hard on him.
Oh, on a day like this, not to run with power steering, that's real tough, Larry.
Trouble in corner number 2. That could have been Tim Steele. Rob, what do you think? The car looks red with an orange number on it, and if so, if it's the number 89, that is Tim Steele, the man who's really had just an odyssey this weekend. It's been a frightening weekend at times. It's been mostly a frustrating weekend, and perhaps it has just ended against the concrete.
Well, they often call the second year the sophomore slump, and that may be plaguing Tim Steele in 1991. His best finish was a second in the Valvoline 200 at Berlin, finished 5th at Salem, but was leading that race near the end.
I think this may have been a family affair. Team Cuz, 2/3 of it apparently came together coming out of corner number 2.
Did not see the incident actually take place. Glenn Allen Jr.'s car sitting on the racetrack down on the bottom right-hand corner.
Team Cuz is that unofficial fraternity that is made up of 3 of the younger drivers on the American Speed Association trail. You just saw 2 of them. The third one, Gary St. Amant, won here a year ago, but not so today. It's been a tough weekend for Team Cuz. At Milwaukee earlier this season, Tim Steele was knocked out of that event because of a crash. He was officially awarded the 31st starting position. It looks like he has designs of getting back into this race. There is he spinning in that red car on the right-hand side of your screen.
You can also see at the top of the screen that car number 66, Glenn Allen Jr., appeared to make contact with Tom Harrington, and that may have been what created the damage to car number 66. You can see that the crew is looking at that car, but they don't seem to be doing so at much of a feverish pace whatsoever. I think they've pretty much decided that the afternoon is over. Heavy damage to the right front suspension of the Base Zone Construction Chevrolet.
They have had an up-and-down season. We commented earlier that they won the first race of the season, thereby becoming, obviously, the first points leader for 1991. But from then, it's not all been downhill, but there have been more declines in the roller coaster than there have been inclines, that's for sure.
Well, it looked like Glenn had the race won at Cayuga when he ran out of fuel with 9 laps to go. And yesterday in the pit area, perhaps some very disturbing news for that young man. As we understand, there may be some financial problems for that racing team.
Ralph, you can update us on Glenn?
Glenn, how are you doing? Doing good. On the parade lap start of the race, we broke 2 valve springs, so the motor we was only hitting on 4 cylinders, and just trying to stay out of trouble, and 2 cars crashed on the backstretch, got together. We had nowhere to go, so we tore off the right front. So this base stone construction Chevrolet is done for today. You know, we minus some cylinders trying to get some points, bonus points, but it's not helping us out, so we're just going to park it.
A long weekend for Glenn Allen finally came to an end.
All right, Ralph, thank you very much. Glenn Allen, who came into the 1991 season with so much anticipation, is on the sidelines today. We would like to take a moment to remind you that the announcers for this telecast have been contracted for and approved by the American Speed Association. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission of this telecast without the written consent of the American Speed Association and Group 5 Sports is strictly prohibited. How's that?
Excellent.
I think that kind of covers that story.
Pit stops. Rule of the day, the last few minutes, and while we were at break, some shake-up in the running order. Scott Hansen reassumes the pole position. And look who's running right behind him in second. The guy that started right beside him at the green flag, Darrell Waltrip, sets up a tremendous shootout to the finish.
Well, Tom Jones and the blue number 22 of Dave Stamm are immediately behind the pace car in front of Waltrip. Let's see which way they go. It's likely they'll go down to the bottom as instructed in the driver's meeting. They do. They stay off of the throttle. The leaders flash by on the outside.
Seen a lot of youngsters running strongly this afternoon, but for now, it's the veterans out in front. Scott Hansen, Darrell Waltrip running 1-2. Right behind them, Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy. 4 cars, a quartet right together as Eddy drops down low. He wants 3rd position.
Approaching the 200 lap point. We will go 250 laps. So 20% of this race remains. It's not been a race that's been dominated by any one car. But those 4 cars up front have spent most of the afternoon in the lead.
Well, you can see that battle for 3rd position, and it has been replayed between these 2 drivers so many times over the last 2 seasons. They've traded paint, they've swapped ends with each other, they've had crosswords. But I think they leave it on the racetrack. At the drivers' meeting at Cayuga a couple of weeks ago, Mike Eddy said, "Hey, Bob, come sit next to me." And he said, "No, Mike, I'm not ready to trade paint with you quite yet."
Well, if you're at home watching, it's time to pick your favorites with 20% of the race to go. One of the newest stars of the American Speed Association, Scott Hansen, sets the pace. He's in that white red trim number 53. If he's your favorite, time to start pulling right now. And then you have Darrell Waltrip, who you're looking at right now through Mike Eddy's front windshield. Darrell Waltrip is one of the historic stars of the American Speed Association. First winning one of these races back in 1972. That's Mike Eddy you're riding with. He's the man right now who is the toast of the ASA town in 1991. The old veteran right behind him, another veteran. The all-time leading winner in the American Speed Association is Bob Seneker, who's going to come home victorious today.
Mike Eddy moved to the low side, put the bumper on the rear end of Darrell Waltrip's car number 17, and appropriated 2nd position, relegating Waltrip to 3rd. Seneker right there to challenge should any of them bobble in 4th position in car number 84.
I'm going to make a guess here. Knowing Mike Eddy and his personality, I think that Mike Eddy's thinking right now inside his helmet, hey, I think this one's between me and the guy in black.
Well, here he goes. Mike Eddy wants the lead, pulls alongside Scott Hansen, a slight advantage crossing the start-finish line, and he's gunning for 4 in a row, Larry.
By the guy in black, I mean black and orange and white. I think Eddy thinks it's between him and Waltrip.
I wasn't sure what you meant.
I understand.
Waltrip is right there, lurking in the wings. He runs 3rd. He's down low, tucks right in behind Mike Eddy, and I think he feels like if he stays behind Eddy, he can appropriate 2nd if they can keep Scott up on the high side of the racetrack.
Right now, Mike is really having to labor to get underneath Hansen, even though that Eddy is on the preferred line. Hansen with seemingly slightly better horsepower, but he's being outmaneuvered in these long corners here at Nashville. Eddy finally gets underneath. As you pointed out, there's Waltrip. Now Hansen's trying to close the door. He looks for room down to the inside, but there is no room as Waltrip immediately and very smartly had his nose inside of Hansen's left rear fender.
Certainly Mike Eddy is looking only forward, but were he to look behind, this is exactly what he would see. Look at the distance there between Darrell Waltrip and Scott Hansen. It narrowed pretty significantly as they exited turn 4 and headed down the main straightaway. Hansen trying to force Waltrip as low as he possibly can, trying to force him to scrub off speed on the bottom.
It is Eddy, Hansen, Waltrip, and Seneker. The first 4 are running very tight. as they have battled with each other, plus worked their way around slower traffic. Tony Raines begins to make his presence felt again. He runs in 5th. He's just outside of the picture. Every once in a while, he creeps in. In 6th position, these are unofficial, the rundown, is John Benson Jr. In 7th position is Joe Shear. 8th is Jay Sauter. 9th is Kent Stauffer. And in 10th position, Bruce Vanderlaan. That's the unofficial rundown after 205 laps of the top 10.
This juncture, we've had 9 lead changes among 5 drivers, 8 caution flags for 37 laps at the 200-lap mark for Delco Voyager 250.
Waltrip now decides to try the high side. Interesting. Waltrip is running that conservative line down in the bottom, trying to toe the mark on that yellow line that marks the inside of the banking of the racetrack. Couldn't get around. Hansen says, maybe there is something to that higher groove. More RPMs may get me past. And sure enough, 1 corner and he's there.
I'll be surprised to see Bob Seneker using the same line as he now pulls up alongside Scott Hansen. And we've got a battle for the 3rd position. Can Waltrip close in on Eddie? Look how quickly he's narrowing the gap between 1st and 2nd.
Ralph, what's going on down in the pits? Are they happy with Waltrip?
Well, Larry, if you can believe this or not, Eddie Jones, the crew chief for Darrell Waltrip, just told me that according to Darrell, the car's not handling exactly the way Darrell would like it. From where I'm standing, he's able to take that car anywhere he wants to go with it. If that's the case, Mike Eddy is really going to have his hands full.
Yeah, Ralph, I think you're exactly right. If that car is not handling well. And there's Waltrip looking to the inside of Eddie, but Eddie is putting a lap on Dennis Vogel. He had to move up there to get around. Waltrip does seem to be handling just a little better in the corners with Eddie. But traffic is so heavy, there's no room to go.
No, there certainly isn't. Now they'll put another lap on John Olson in car number 44. He moves over diplomatically and allows them to pass. Right behind him coming the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place cars of Seneker, Hansen, and Raines.
Well, Eddie takes Darrell just as high as he possibly can. You are now riding with Mike Eddy. There's a lot of thinking going on in those 2 race cars. Mike Eddy trying to figure out how wide can I make this car and how fast can I make it go around the corners. And Waltrip waiting for a mistake.
Well, over his racing career, Mike Eddy, with the tremendous success that he's had, Larry, has been asked many times why he has not chosen to go Winston Cup racing. Well, I think today he has an opportunity to reprove that he has the ability should he ever decide to make that decision.
The Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac, the black gold trim number 88, continues to hold Darrell Waltrip at bay. Darrell Waltrip has won 5 times in his career an American Speed Association main event. We mentioned earlier that Mike Eddy has moved into 3rd on the all-time list this year. He has 31 career wins. Remember, Seneker still sitting on top, basking with 66 career wins. He was virtually unbeatable for about 3 seasons back in the 70s.
Last year, about the midpoint of the racing season, Bob Seneker, he said he would trade a lot of those victories for 1 championship, and it did finally eventuate.
Good point as we take a look at Mike Eddy. Bob Seneker never was the champion of ASA until a year ago. Darrell Waltrip has said, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm ready to go. Waltrip is turning the heat up.
What a tremendous race. Ted Musgrave had said that it was going to be an all Darrell Waltrip show. He's been a factor, and he sure hasn't been by himself up front.
Ralph, we heard from you about Darrell Waltrip. What about Eddie?
Well, Mike Eddy's crew is saying that Mike is telling him that the car is a little bit loose. He asked them what tires they put on. They told him it was just what he wanted. He said, all right, here we go. There's one thing you can always be sure about with Mike Eddy. It does not matter if the car is right for him. He will find a way to make that car run the way he wants it to.
I think most race fans realize when we're talking about loose, that's when the car goes into the corner and at the back end wants to come around. It point the nose down at the bottom of the racetrack and it wants to spin. One thing that a driver can do if
Here
he's
comes
bold
Waltrip.
enough.
Waltrip looks high, but Mike moves up about a quarter of a lane, holds him back. Waltrip is going to look to dart down low, but there's a lap car there. He's got to go high. He loses ground.
As I started to say, if the driver is bold enough, he can drive Larry a bit deeper into the corner.
Here's Waltrip moving to the inside, Rob. I don't think he wants to hear what you got to say. Darrell Waltrip has definitely made the decision. It's time to pass. We have 35 laps to go. Slower traffic in front of Dennis Vogel. Yellow flag. Whoa, tight moment.
And as Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip battled Larry, Bob Seneker closed right in on the two of them.
Very interesting. At this moment, we do not know the reason for the yellow flag, but it was certainly unexpected as the race leaders, as well as we, were really concentrating on that battle, and they all had to jump on the binders pretty seriously.
I wondered who might come on pit road this time. Bob Seneker leaving no doubt. He quickly commits to the bottom side of the racetrack. Now look at Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip. They stay up high. They may elect to stay on the racetrack.
Seneca, Hansen, Raines, Benson, and Joe Shear are choosing to pit. Vanderlaan, who's also in the top 10, unofficially on the same lap with the leaders, he has pitted. But as you pointed out, Mike Eddy, Darrell Waltrip, and Jay Sauter and Kent Stauffer among the first 10 cars stay out. So they run 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is the traffic as that yellow flag flew. There's Waltrip looking for Scheller on the high side of the racetrack. Eddy on the brakes, slides around Dennis Vogel. He sees Darrell Waltrip running on the outside, but no harm of losing a position there because the yellow was already out, but very anxious moment.
Either Vogel had a problem with his race car or he saw some debris on the racetrack.
32 laps remain in this 250-lap race. It looks like it's going to be a shootout between Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip.
You always want to put on your best show when the folks that sponsor your racing series are on hand, and we see three of the top folks from General Motors and AC-Delco looking on with great anticipation. It's obvious that they're really into this. Archie Long, Brent Snelson, and Gil Cashin all with us this afternoon.
Here is Mike Eddy, who has radioed in from the cockpit saying that there is oil all over the racetrack. There was a spin in turns 3 and 4 executed by Dennis Vogel. He's in that yellow-orange car. You'll see him spinning into the to the screen here, and no one else coming into contact with him. There is Vogel, the rest of the field taking evasive action, going to the high side as Dennis is down in the bottom. He'll drop that car down into first gear and pull back out in front of the rest of the crowd, but the yellow flag had already flown, but Eddy and Seneca were so busy with each other, they didn't have an opportunity to see it. Here's the end of that incident.
Well, you can see that Mike Eddy elects to go low. I'm not sure I would have taken that line. With Vogel dropping down to the bottom of the racetrack, he was very fortunate to escape.
But Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip survive. Again, they chose not to pit. Now we're inside of 30 laps to go, so definitely in the final stages of this race. Bob Seneca, John Benson Jr., Scott Hansen out of Wisconsin, all those drivers who were threats to win this race chose to come in for new rubber. Waltrip and Eddy did not. And I have a feeling, Ralph, that it was a matter of monkey see, monkey do for Eddy and Waltrip. What do you think?
I think you're right, Larry. This is exactly what this race is going to come down to, according to the crew chiefs of Darrell Waltrip and Mike Eddy. Bias ply tires from Goodyear. These tires are both on the same cars. Now, Mike Eddy's crew chief was telling me he thinks the tires that are on that car right now are good enough for third place, maybe not much better. He says what we're going to find out now is just how tough Mike Eddy really is.
Ralph, it's a very warm day, and I'm noticing a bit of a sheen or a shine. Are you getting warm down there?
We are very warm down here, Larry.
So.
I'll tell you what. I think the drivers are probably losing a few pounds. I think my camera crew and I are doing the same.
It's got to be very difficult in the cockpit, particularly with all the yellow flags that we've had today. That's when the drivers are most uncomfortable because they don't have that 100-mile-an-hour wind blowing through the cockpit. And when they're not busy at work, their mind wanders to other things, and they get very warm at those moments.
Drivers are often asked, what do you do to prepare for a long-distance race in the heat and temperatures that you feel inside the race car? There's really no physical exercise that you can do. There's no substitute for laps behind the wheel. Yes, if you're in good shape and you're trim and you eat right and all those good things that you often hear about, that helps. But, there's no substitution for just being out there on the racetrack.
Saw the graphic on Mike Eddy, his career stats well over 50% in the top 5. We commented that we started 32 cars today. 40 actually attempted to qualify for this race. Drivers who showed up here at Nashville who did not get into the field. Len Kubian in car number 92. We'll get back to that list in just a moment. Here are the upcoming ASA races live on TNN. You can see the dates, a couple of weeks, July 14th, July 28th, August 11th from Pennsylvania, the Jennerstown racetrack, and the Minnesota State Fair in September. We are just about ready to go back to green. We'll continue to run down that list of drivers who did not qualify for this race a little later, but the green flag flickers, and Mike Eddy, who's had a chance to breathe, relax, and maybe plot some strategy to hold off Darrell Waltrip, goes back to the front.
I'm not sure those guys chose right by staying out on the racetrack. You just saw back in the pack Bob Seneca and Johnny Benson really moving
Eddy.
up.
Mike Eddy loses the handle in corner number 4. The crowd rises to the occasion. Waltrip senses the kill, moves to the inside. Eddy now really with his hands full.
Well, there's a story that's circulating. The only guy that Dale Earnhardt's afraid of is Mike Eddy. Perhaps the same could be said for Darrell Waltrip.
Somehow Eddy was able to turn back Waltrip. He was way out of shape in corner number 4. Waltrip was neck and neck with him coming down the front straightaway, but somehow Eddy was able to turn him away.
He held his ground back in 3rd position. You can see Jay Sauter in car number 1. He's lurked outside of the top 5 most of the day. Now finds himself in the 3rd position on the racetrack as the battle reforms for the lead.
Inside of 25 laps to go. The drivers who stopped for new tires are still in slower traffic. Bob Seneker looks like he will be the first among those drivers who stopped for new tires to break from the pack. He is about 100 yards behind the leaders. There is Seneker. He has just moved underneath Ken Stauffer. Stauffer had a strong day. He has never contended for the lead, but he's been in the top 5. There's John Benson Jr. in car number 21. New tires. He moves underneath Stauffer.
He picks up the 5th position. Behind him comes car number 53, Scott Hansen, and Tony Raines in the 25 machine. Great racing back in the pack among cars on the lead lap.
Joe Scheer is right behind this quartet. Kenny Schrader is in there. We're checking with timing and scoring to see if Schrader is on the lead lap. He had a long pit stop a little earlier. He is 2 laps down, so if you see Schrader, the bright yellow car, he is not in it for top 10.
With less than 25 laps to go, Larry, and maybe this is an unfair question, which of these 2 drivers up front would you say has the greater determination? What would give him that additional incentive?
It's a toss-up. Mike Eddy, it's not so much that he wants to create history and win his 4th win in a row. Mike Eddy wants to win every time out. I think he totally forgets any additional incentive other than winning when he buckles up to race. Darrell Waltrip feels as though he has a lot of pride at stake here. This is his home racetrack. He does not expect to be beaten at Nashville.
Cars contending for 4th position. Johnny Benson, Tony Raines, and Scott Hansen.
You're looking at 4th position. There is the trio right there. Benson, Hansen, Raines. Boy, they are all tied together. 2, sometimes 3 abreast around the high bank corners here in the half mile at Nashville. Raines was the quicker one earlier. Hansen gets into the back of John Benson. Benson almost comes around. Hansen leaves him go. The battle resumes.
It appears that both Raines and Hansen have quicker race cars. Benson almost loses it. They'll come out of turn number 4, and Raines picks up a position.
Twice in that last lap, Scott Hansen was running so much quicker than John Benson. See the damage on the rear of Benson's car. He almost took him out. Unintentionally? Yes, sir.
And the black number 36 of Joe Scheer right there to challenge as well. He wants 6th position, and here comes Waltrip.
Lap number 234 goes by. 15 laps to go. Waltrip holds on the high side. He chooses the 2nd lane. He says, I hope the RPMs work. He's a little quicker than Eddy. Eddy says he has a handling problem. Waltrip, a great charge in number 3.
I don't want to say this too loudly, but look who's creeping into the frame in 3rd position with fresh tires on the right side. Bob Seneker, the sneaker, is there to challenge as well.
15 laps to go. Eddy moves up about a half a lane, says, hey, Waltrip, if you're going to pass me, you've got to consider lane number 3. Waltrip with more of an advantage this time, going into corner number 3. They're trading paint. It's black, it's orange, it's silver, it's white. Side by side, there are now 3 of them in this one.
Seneker is winless in 1989. He'd like to do it on national television this afternoon. Waltrip has a slight advantage as they move out of turn number 2. Now Eddy comes back to challenge on the bottom.
Eddy,
what a race!
Eddy just will not give up. He goes over the hump in the tunnel. He almost loses control, but he keeps going straight. Waltrip seemingly had buried Mike Eddy about 3 times in the last 3 laps, but Eddy holds his ground.
Waltrip has the lead. Here comes Seneker. He wants 2nd. Maybe Ralph Shaheen a bit prophetic in saying that Mike Eddy did not have the best handling race car after the last yellow flag.
Look at Seneker. Seneker really dives into corner number 3. Waltrip is looking to the right. He's saying, oh my goodness, I didn't see this guy coming.
Lane Automotive Chevrolet of Bob Seneker without a major sponsor wants the win. He wants the lead. Look from Mike Eddy's viewpoint. Seneker right up on the edge of control. He's right up on where the track gets very, very slippery.
And Eddy is saying, okay, Seneker, get up alongside. You guys trade some paint. Maybe I can sneak back. But they are putting a little distance between themselves and the 3rd running now, Mike Eddy. Oh, Seneker, look how close he was to the wall.
He obviously has the strongest car out there, but he does not have the most laps on this racetrack. Waltrip is wrestling a beast right now. Larry, did you see that time as he went to turn number 2? Just how sideways he was?
look at Bob Seneker. Bob Seneker says, I think I can take this guy on the inside. This time by, we will be completing lap number 238. The scoreboard has gone out. That's a judgment call. I saw 13 laps about 1 lap ago. Seneker really gets a good bite going into number 1 this time.
Out of turn number 2, Dennis Vogel once again comes into play, the lap machine, car number 51.
Oh.
And look at Waltrip's move to the high side.
9 to go this time. I missed by 3 laps. The action has been so hot and heavy, you lose track. Bob Seneker says, I have the faster car. I want to beat this guy. Waltrip says, no way. This is my forest, buddy.
We've got to watch what's going on up front, but back in the pack, a very similar battle for the 4th position. Again, Seneker moves down low. Again, he's alongside Darrell Waltrip. Who's it going to be coming off the 4th corner? A slight edge maybe for Seneker.
And here comes more slower traffic looming ahead, so Waltrip spies it. It's John Olson. He gets as close to Olson as he possibly can, and Seneker has to get out of the throttle.
Down the back straightaway with just a handful of laps to go. Darrell Waltrip fighting for all he's worth. He's out of the groove.
Waltrip loses it. Apparently a tire problem, but he comes back to the inside. Oh, wow.
Incredible. Darrell Waltrip reassumes the lead, and this grandstand is going absolutely delirious.
Waltrip apparently has really damaged the tires. He comes almost to a stop. Seneker plows into the tail of Waltrip. Waltrip is almost out of control. If Seneker could somehow just hold on to his emotions, I think he's got him.
Well, if there's a guy that can control his emotions, it's Bob Seneker. He's been called by some folks aloof. He's really just a quiet, introspective type guy until he climbs behind the wheel of a race car.
That last move by Darrell Waltrip after he lost the lead to come back and do the old traditional racing crossover to come back was an artist at work. It was a superlative.
That's a gutsy move. You really put your car in jeopardy when you do that. You run literally on the edge of control when that happens. 5 laps to go, Larry. Has Seneker used up what he had in the way of an advantage with fresher tires?
I'll tell you, it's almost not proper to talk over this. These guys are putting on a terrific show. There's Waltrip getting out of the groove again. Slower traffic up ahead. Does Seneker have an advantage this time? I don't know. He seems to have lost the edge.
Mike Eddy is still there in car number 88, but he's now fallen about 10 car lengths in arrears. 4 laps to go, and again Seneker down to the low side.
Just a half-mile track. It takes about 21 seconds to get around. We have about 80 seconds to go. After crossing the start-finish line this time, about 60 seconds to go. Lap 247 is now in the books. Waltrip slides through corner number 1 and 2, but he has a car length advantage. Bob Seneker dives to the low side in corner number 3, lap number 248 coming up this time. Seneker is all over the racetrack. He is out of tires. Waltrip, we suspect, is out of tires. 2 laps to go.
Well, Darrell has been the proverbial cat with 9 lives as he's had lap traffic to utilize several times, but he may not need those lap cars.
A lap and a half to go. 30 seconds to go. Seneker says, I got to charge a little harder. How many tires do you have left, Darrell? That are good. The white flag this time around. We have just 20 seconds to go in this race. Darrell Waltrip looks like he's in control, but Seneker won't say die. He moves to the inside.
There have been 10 lead changes, maybe one more, maybe not. 2 drivers, 2 divergent opinions. Here comes Seneker. We're going to have a battle to the checkered off turn number 4.
They are side by side, fender to fender. Seneker wiggles just a little bit, and Darrell Waltrip, much to the delight of an extremely partisan crowd, comes home the winner. The reputation is safe.
What an amazing finish to this race. Darrell Waltrip has not competed in an ASA event this year. He brings a 4-year-old machine to the racetrack, does some trick things to the suspension on the rear end of that race car, and drives the Western Auto AC-Delco Chevrolet Lumina to a victory. And I'll tell you, he's leading a charmed life wherever he races in 1991.
Ralph Shaheen, the one thing that I really wish that I could do in every race was to have the opportunity to interview the race winner, and you're going to have a real thrill this time, Ralph. That was a terrific race. I hope you had an opportunity to see it down there. Waltrip has got to be excited. This was a race that went literally right down to the wire, and he really showed the old aggressive Darrell Waltrip is still there.
Waltrip won the race, Larry, but I think what, if nothing else, was proven to race fans this afternoon, is that these ASA drivers are the toughest competitors, the toughest hombres on the short tracks.
example, Darrell Waltrip, the man who in the 1960s and 70s owned the Nashville Motor Speedway, proved that in 1991 he still got the title. Welcome back to Nashville, where we have just seen one of the most exciting ASA races in history, and how appropriate it was for the first ASA race ever live on national TV. The unofficial results: Darrell Waltrip, the winner; Bob Seneker, a challenging second; Mike Eddy is third; Scott Hansen fourth; and Tony Raines, the youngster, comes home fifth. Well, Ralph, I'm looking forward to this one. Take her away, buddy.
Well, Larry, a very tired Darrell Waltrip joins us here in Victory Circle. Hugs all the way around. Here comes his wife, Stevie. Darrell, I've seen you drive a lot of races, my friend, but that, I think, was the epitome of Darrell Waltrip behind the wheel.
Well, I tell you, Seneker was tough on them new tires, and we got together a little bit there a time or two, but I just had to hang on. I didn't want to give up that lead. I wanted to win this sucker, and Bob did too. I know, and I congratulate him. He could have really took me out probably anytime he wanted to, but we had a great race in Western Auto, AC-Delco, Exxon, Goodyear tires. They all came through for us today, and it's just a great day. It's fun to win at home, I tell you.
Well,
and thank the Lord, too, for a good day. I don't care what they write in the newspaper. I thank the Lord.
Well, before you had to deal with Bob Seneker, you had to shake Mike Eddy.
Well, I knew Mike had been kind of fast for a few laps, and he seemed like he faded a tad. So I didn't know what would happen with him, but Mike's a tough competitor. I guess he's the Dale Earnhardt of ASA, if you want to look at it that way. And so I didn't want to, I just needed to kind of let him do his thing and then see what I could do with him. Then Seneker got in the picture, and that really put the heat on. They said, Seneker's coming, and if you're going to do anything, you better get going. I thought I could get the high line, and it worked. And then I thought I could go back down low and hold Bob off, but that didn't work. So I had to go back up high, and it was like running on dirt, but it was fun.
Well, some of the guys conceded this race almost to you before it even started. They said, Waltrip's got something none of us has got. It's in the rear end. You got the win. Do you want to tell us what it is?
We just run a Winston Cup gear in this car like we do on our Winston Cup car, and the rest of these boys run a quick change or whatever, and it's no big trick or secret or anything. Dick Beatty would be real proud of me. He could pull that sucker out, and she's stock as is day long.
We got here's Archie Long coming in from AC-Delco with him as well.
He's gonna. I had to win because Arch was here, and he told me if I didn't win, he wasn't gonna pull for me no more. Eat your heart out, Earnhardt.
I got Archie with me. Darrell Waltrip, Archie Long, his wife, the rest of the gang down here from the Western Auto crew. A big celebration here in Victory Lane in Darrell Waltrip's own hometown of Nashville. Larry.
Ralph, an obvious reference to the company that's on the side of Dale Earnhardt's Winston Cup car. It's also GM. Here again is that unofficial result rundown: Waltrip, Seneker, Eddy, Hansen, and Raines. The top 5 remain as we told you earlier. And here are the remaining cars in the top 10: Joe Shear and Jay Sauter and Johnny Benson Jr., Kent Stauffer, and Ken Schrader. The first 9 cars finished on the lead lap. But in the end, even though we had several lead changes, it came down to just 2 race cars, number 17 and number 84. And it was a couple of classic veterans. We called them artists earlier, and here's a nice slow motion look at what went on inside the last 5 laps.
I don't know whether or not you could compare this to ballet, but watch this move by Darrell Waltrip. He goes to the high side and then immediately points the thing right to the bottom of the race course. Did you see the little wiggle as he came off of that 4th turn? He very easily could have spun.
Well, what happened was that Waltrip knew he'd made a mistake into the number 1 corner. Darrell slows down to hold on to the race car, and Seneker gives him just a little nudge and then a second nudge as Waltrip almost comes to a stop, relatively speaking, in front of him.
After the first bump, Waltrip was slow. You could see Seneker allow some daylight. He got out of the throttle, allowed Darrell to get his car straightened out before he resumed the challenge.
Back to that Waltrip move, though, what happened was he realized he had made a mistake entering the corner. He immediately made the decision, I'm diving low, and I'm going to go get that lead back because I know where Seneker is going. I've just opened the door for him.
Well, he sure did, and this was, I know, one that Darrell wanted to win. He wanted to come back to the grassroots. He won his first ASA race back in 1972. The last victory came for him right here at Nashville Motor Raceway. A similar finish. Mark Martin appeared to have the race well in hand in the All-American 400 before running out of brakes, and Waltrip zoomed by him with just a couple of circuits to go.
But for the pride of Franklin, Tennessee, Darrell Waltrip, that was his 6th career win in the American Speed Association history. And certainly none of them were any more difficult than this. Here are the next 4 races live on TNN, the ASA races, the Blaines Farm and Fleet 200, Coming up in a couple of weeks, the Western Auto 300 in 4 weeks, Pennsylvania 300, and the Minnesota 300 at the State Fair. Bob Seneker, the Dorr, Michigan driver, finishes second for the second time in 1991. He is still looking for the first win, despite being the all-time wins leader. He also has a third, a fourth, and a fifth this year. Now, there are some who call Bob Seneker the Darrell Waltrip of ASA. Well, Ralph, his counterpart, beat him today.
He sure did, Larry, but not by much. I'll tell you, Bob Seneker, you really gave him a run for your money today.
Well, with about 30 laps to go, we put on right side tires because at the time it seemed like all we had was a third place car. I could hang on, but I couldn't have a chance to pass him. So we pitted and put on the tires, went to the back, and it was coming up good, but the lap traffic didn't work right, and we still wound up with quite a push in the car, so I couldn't hold it on the bottom like I wanted to. The car was definitely fast enough, but the traffic didn't work out right. We should have got it.
If you had to do it all over again, would you still go the same way, hindsight being 20/20?
Definitely. Only I wish we could have got the stagger right. It would have been quicker. I couldn't turn it down the bottom of the corners.
There was a little bit of a bump between you and Darrell, but it seemed to dissipate quickly. Pretty much a gentleman's race out there for the finish?
Well, I kind of tapped him, let him know I was there, and he brake checked me to knowledge, and we went on from there.
Didn't do any damage to your car, though, because he caught you in the front end. That wasn't a problem.
No, we just said hello. We're just glad the Lane Automotive Chevy is running good as it is.
Well, some people say that you could be the Darrell Waltrip of ASA. What do you think?
No, Darrell's going to have to get older.
Darrell Waltrip might have to get older, but Bob, he is definitely the 1990 ASA champion. And if he keeps running the way he did here today, Larry, could be 1991 a repeat.
Well, I think there's proof that those who say that Waltrip and Seneker are among the gentleman drivers, and maybe they're a little passive on the racetrack when you compare them to the Earnhardts and the Eddies of the world. Nah, I don't think so. There was a lot going on between the two of them that those of us here in the booth and the people in the grandstands probably weren't aware of. I thought in one of those laps that Seneker had a hand or something out the left side window, perhaps acknowledging Bob Seneker running very close and very competitive to him. Bob Seneker, however, comes home in second position. He still stands on top the list with the most career wins in ASA with 66. The winner, of course, Darrell Waltrip. There were 10 lead changes, the last one coming on lap number 247 among 5 drivers. We had 10 cautions today, mostly in the first half of the race, for 43 laps. 8 cars in all finished on the lead lap. And by and large, the drivers who have performed well all season long in ASAs, those in the top of the points, had a pretty good day. Here is the last lap, Rob. It was Seneker's last gasp, and he really didn't get as close on this lap as he had previous laps.
Going down the main straightaway, it looked like Darrell had built a sufficient margin that would carry him to the victory, but he suddenly drifted up high, and Seneker came back once again on the low side. Again, you can see Darrell gets a good run off the corners. That's one advantage to slipping up to the high side. You don't lose momentum, and you can get a good run. Seneker is down low. He's obviously got a quicker race car, but once again, Darrell puts the pedal down and hangs on in a very close finish.
Waltrip had just enough stick in those good years in the middle of turns 3 and 4 that he finally got the bite about halfway through, and it was just enough to propel him back past Seneker, who was down on the inside. Of course, when you're down there, the RPMs are down. You can't use the motor quite as much, but it is the shorter way around. But it was just a terrific race, and the guy who looked like he was going to be in it until right there at the very end got to be a little disappointed, but the third place, Ralph Shaheen, after 3 wins, ain't bad.
It certainly is not bad, Larry. As Larry just said, Mike, you didn't get the win you were hoping for, but third place ain't all that bad.
Well, you can't. Third place ain't bad. That's all I can say. You can't win every race, and the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac run really well today, and I just made the wrong choice, I guess, there at the end. I should have pitted. You know, it's hard to make yourself come in when you're in the lead, and I thought I could hold them off, and we did the best we can, and we're not ashamed at all with third. In fact, we're kind of happy.
Was that your choice to stay out on the racetrack?
Well, yeah, I make all the choices here, so anything that happens, there's nobody to blame but me. Yes, it was my choice to stay out. I thought that we were fast enough to do the job, but evidently we weren't.
One thing that hasn't been brought up yet, you got the new black colors. It was a very hot day today. You don't seem too physically drained. Did the black paint make a difference on you today? Were you physically tired?
No, I wasn't tired. It's just, you know, after you get in there and you get so hot, when you stop and get out, it all kinds of hits you, you know, and then you got to stand in that sun, and I just wanted to sit in the shade for a while and dump some water on myself.
We started this race under cloud cover, and then came the sunshine. How radically did that change the car for you inside?
Well, it kept getting hotter, and really, you know, you're so busy with everything that's going on out there that you're really not paying any attention to how hot it is until it's all over.
How about the battle with Darrell himself? He pulled a move on you coming back through the backside over here, coming out of turn 3 and 4. Pretty strong stuff, but you seem to be able to answer him right back.
Well, I was doing the best I could, and my car was getting a little loose at the end, and but on that restart I got into 3 and it when it turned, and I kind of went up the bank and he got underneath me, but it recovered really quick, and but I guess I needed a little better tires because they were wore out. I only changed the left sides once today, and they're getting pretty thin at the end.
Well, Larry, you know, when one streak comes to an end, the best thing to do is start another one.
And knowing Mike Eddy, certainly no one is more capable than that than he. It's the second time this year that tire problems have thwarted Mike's efforts. He had tire problems in the opening race of the year at Columbus. He came home 12th there, but his third place going along with his most recent 3 consecutive wins, it's a pretty good run for Mike here in the early season. Now, here is the view that we're going to show you the view a little later that Mike Eddy had when the lead took place, or the change took place between Bob Seneker and Darrell Waltrip. But first, here is Waltrip putting the pass on Mike when Mike lost the lead.
You can see Bob Seneker just waiting to make a decision whether he goes up high or down low. Now he's committed to the high side. He knows Darrell's got the line and the lead as they move into the 3rd turn.
And there is Seneker. Remember, Seneker had pitted about 5 laps earlier and come up with brand new tires, and so he follows Darrell Waltrip through. He figures that this race now is between himself and Darrell Waltrip. And there's Eddy valiantly trying to hold on. His only hope was to stay right down in the bottom because he was out of rubber compared to Darrell Waltrip and Bob Seneker.
Seneker tried to stay optimistic in the post-race interview, but I think at that point in the race he thought it was his.
Here was the view that Mike had he been looking out the right-hand side. There goes Mr. Waltrip. Bye-bye, Mike Eddy. And uh-oh, here comes Bob Seneker on the outside. And Mike Eddy says, well, I guess I'm racing for 3rd today.
Well, he sure did. Now, typically, Mike Eddy would have slipped right back up between them, but I think he knew at that juncture that he was not going to be a factor in the outcome.
Mike came into today's race ranked 4th in point standings. Incidentally, he just turned 39 years of age within the last week. Bob Seneker came in ranked 3rd. He was close behind Scott Hansen, who was 2nd in points, so it's likely that Seneker will move up and possibly move past Scott Hansen. John Benson Jr., depending upon where he finished in the top 10, could still be leading the points, despite the fact he's still looking for his first career win in ASA. We'll be back with more after this. For Darrell Waltrip, who was so successful in the 80s in auto racing, the past 4 or 5 years have been a bit of a struggle. A lot of confusion, but he is having one of his finest seasons in the past 5 years here in 1991. And he has added another laurel to the crown today by winning the American Speed Association race at the Nashville Motor Speedway. Scott Hansen, who led much of this race, he started from the pole. He looked like a winner, frankly speaking, until the halfway point. He is 36 years of age, but despite that, he is relatively new to ASA. Now, that might have been a factor in his inability to keep up with Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker today. Who knows what the most important factor was in the inability to keep up with Darrell Waltrip. I get a feeling that's from years of racing back into the 1970s. But Scott Hansen is standing by with Ralph.
Scott, how much did experience come into play on this racetrack today?
Well, I tell you, not as much as I was hoping it would. You know, the track just got so greasy on everybody. You know, I'm sure Darrell's, you know, being his home track and as much as he ran here, he knew pretty much how to keep the tires on his car a little bit better. But, you know, we had just a fantastic run today. You know, the Baker Motorsports crew had me in and out first every time, you know, and we had lug nuts fall off the last stop, you know, the one that counted we had little problems with, but our car just ran real loose, and, you know, we just ended up 4th.
Tell me about tires. Did that become the problem that we thought it would at the beginning of the race? From what I saw from the pits, it didn't look that bad.
The tires weren't wearing out, you know, but the racetrack, there was a couple of cars that lost a lot of oil, and it greased the track up real bad, you know, and this place gets bad to begin with, and with being a little bit harder compound tire, it made it a little bit worse, I guess. You know, the tires were actually tread-wise good, but, you know, they hardened up and slickened up. But Goodyear did a great job getting us this tire here. We didn't have to worry about it blowing tires or anything like that. So we had a little bit harder tire, and it might have slowed the race down just a little bit. But Goodyear did a great job, and like I say, I hope them last few laps were great for the fans, because I know we had quite a battle going where I was, and it looked good up front.
Well, Darrell Waltrip just told us in Victory Lane that the secret weapon he had underneath the rear end of the car was a Winston Cup rear end. He said something that Dick Beatty would have just looked at and said, hey, it's stock, let's go racing. Is all the ASA competitors going to show back up here in Nashville next year with Winston Cup rear ends?
I don't think so. I think Darrell Waltrip will have his hands full next time we come back here. He ran perfect all day, can't take nothing away from him, but like I say, Mike Eddy, Bob Seneker, a lot of guys, this is their first time back here in 4 or 5 years, and they don't give up very easy, and along with myself, we'll be back here, and we'll run with Darrell. Darrell will have his hand. I hope he comes back. We'll have a lot of fun with him again.
Well, Scott Hansen will be moving a little bit closer to his home for our next race back to Milwaukee. But one guy who really drove his heart out today came from 27th position to 5th place. An amazing run for you, Tony Raines.
Well, we had a bad qualifying run, and then we had to run in the last chance race, and we broke a pinion shaft, and we got in on a promoter's choice. The car was handling good. Our engine program's coming along. We're still down just a wee bit, but the guys in the pit did a really good job. We had a couple bad things in the pit. The first stop, we got up to third there. The filler neck broke off in the quarter panel, and we had to come back around, put us back in about 16th or 17th spot again. So, after we got through with those bad luck items, we got going, and the car ran good. Guys in the pit did a good job, and it was a great race.
Well, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm not the smallest either. Look at the size of Tony Raines. How much of an advantage was it for you physically as this race wore on for you to manhandle that car around today?
Well, I haven't been running power steering all year, and it's taken a while to get used to that. I've been running it in the past, but that wasn't a problem today as much as the heat was. It was just the hottest I've ever been in a race car.
Okay, Tony, now tell me about this next race we're going to at Milwaukee, which will be aired as well here on TNN. Are you going to have to come all the way from the back again, or are we going to watch for you from up front?
Well, I prefer to start up front, so I'll see if we can get that done in qualifying. But, a long race, it doesn't hurt you as bad as you think, but it's a lot funner to start up front.
Tony Raines, a fine effort, Larry, 27th to 5th.
In a note of irony, Tony Raines attended Boy Scouts in the basement of a church in Pendleton, Indiana as a youth. Well, that church is now the building in which ASA is headquartered, believe it or not. Unofficial results, top 10, Darrell Waltrip, Bob Seneker, 1-2. It was very close. Mike Eddy comes home third. Scott Hansen from the pole gets fourth. And Tony Raines, whom you just heard from, was fifth. 6th through 10th, Joe Shear, Jay Sauter, Johnny Benson. Ken Stauffer was not on the lead lap. 1 lap down, car number 90, Ken Stauffer, the Ford. And Ken Schrader in a borrowed machine comes home in 10th position, also losing 1 lap.
Larry, next up for the televiewers is in 2 weeks on the Milwaukee Mile, but it gets very difficult for these race drivers. 2,000 miles out west to Calgary in the Players 500 in conjunction with the rodeo.
This is a view of the last couple laps of action. One other view you can see of Bob Seneker and Darrell Waltrip coming very close several times and actually meeting on the racetrack in those final laps. The lead changed hands twice within the last 3 laps. Darrell Waltrip looked like he had lost this race. He came back, he stayed on the throttle, and out-nerved Bob Seneker going into the number 1 corner. Bob Seneker held on, and he came home second. Rob, any final thoughts?
Tremendous show between 2 of the very best.
Well, this was very appropriate, the first ASA live nationwide race in history, and it was one of the finest in the history of the American Speed Association. My thanks to Ralph Shaheen and Rob Albright. We've had a tremendous race here today, and we hope that all of you at home watching live on the Nashville Network enjoyed it. Our thanks to Group 5 Sports and, of course, the American Speed Association for their cooperation in the production of this race. Until Milwaukee or the next motor race on the Nashville Network, this is Larry Newber. We'll see you at the races.